like to replace about 25 a year.
Just a question, at what point do, or maybe we already do examine what the cost of a picnic table is in the mass market just to purchase these and then reutilize our staff in different ways. We've been doing this for many years, and I just wonder, at $300 in materials plus an hour staff time, are we way beyond what it would cost just to go out and buy 25 a year?
Right. We can certainly look at that before we do this and make sure we're getting the most efficient way to replace this inventory. There's lots of work for park staff to do, so understand your point. Charlie Kelly Parkette. This is a park just at the bottom of 6th Street here on 2nd Avenue. We did have an agreement with the Family Y until last year. They used it for their daycare program. And really what we're proposing is just to reimagine the space a little bit and sort of turn it back to public use. It was used in partnership with the Y, and this would be done in-house by park staff.
Is the fence coming out, and if so, is it going to the cemetery?
We would we wondered about that, and we'll repurpose it where we can. These are our bridge box and planter inserts. They're several years old, and they're starting to deteriorate and need a upgrade. We've got an estimate about $50 labor and materials for each planter. So.
Just a question, with the 10th Street Bridge renovation project, is this something that we should pause on until the bridge is in place?
Dennis, when will, I won't hold you to it, but when will demolition of the 10th Street Bridge commence?
Thank you, Your Worship, the very earliest October of this year, so I think I would say this project should move ahead because it'll be in place for most of the summer, and usually I think Pam's crews are taking them out sometime in October, so we'd be just ready. So as soon as they remove them, we'd be demolishing the bridge.
Thank you. We certainly won't budget for them in 20 when we're into the thick of construction. This is the replacement of the wooden bench around the Bayshore gazebo. This was a project of the Scenic City Order of Good Cheer, and our own staff will replace this with composite material. We mentioned Duncan McClellan Park, the fencing program. Last year we did Duncan Main, and this year's money will look at the north and south diamond. Where we can, we reset posts and reuse the fencing, or if it's badly deteriorated and damaged, we have to replace it. So this will continue the work on the north and south diamonds.
Does this include regrading to any extent and correcting the slope failure? Like, there's parts of the diamond in south particularly, and north, where it's really sagging. And
the infield or outfield?
with the outfield fence.
Oh, yes.
I know it's this capital is for fencing compared to
Yeah. No, you mean the fence is sagging. And yes, this will address the sagging fence. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Right.
Yeah, is there a bit more here than just replacing the fence?
We have some of that work in the budget forecast, not just for this year.
I was talking about that. I know last year we did the infield, I guess we put sod in the infield. Have we been able to take a look? I know that in the spring it didn't look too good. Was it over that course of the ball season? Was it able to replenish itself, or were you going back to square one on that?
We'll see what it looks like in the spring. We were hoping the fall and spring would be kind to it and that the grass would take, but if there's sections that haven't taken, we'll replace it. And we'll talk about a bit of a project to assist us in watering as part of this budget.
Okay.
Next, we have the Duncan McClellan Park bleachers. This is 100% funded through the Coke sponsorship. Unfortunately, this was an 18 project. We went out to tender last year and we didn't get any bids. So this will replace the bleachers around the essentially first third base line and the backstop at Duncan with a low maintenance, durable product, but it is paid for through the sponsorship. Speaking of watering, we have a watering system at Duncan McClellan. The water pressure, although it tests at 60 pounds PSI, it isn't sufficient to run the irrigation system, so this would be a pump that would boost that water so that it can run the irrigation system.
My question here is, and I might be missing something, but we've always had, like, we had irrigation up there.
We did.
And water pressure doesn't usually change. It could, but down below it says to increase the water pressure to the manufacturer's recommended pressure to operate the irrigation machine. So, like, did the water pressure change? Or,
No, and the water pressure is meeting what would be normal for that area. We wondered if there was a leak in the system, but we had water staff in and tested it. The irrigation system that we had would run on lower pressure than the new system. So it's just a pump to upgrade the pressure to run that new system. The next item is really a risk management strategy, and it's extending the protective fencing at St. George's Ball Diamond along the 10th Street frontage. The soccer complex drainage program in 2017 and 18, we partnered with Owen Sound Minor Soccer to prepare a drainage plan. They retained GSS Engineering to do that plan. We've been splitting the costs of both the planning and the capital over the last couple of years. So last year they did, I think, Field 4, so it's a slit drainage project. It allows them to be on the field earlier in the spring and the water to clear away quicker after a rain. And so it's a 50-50 partnership. So I think it should be 6,500 city, 6,500 soccer, total project 13,000. So.
Thank you. Is there any plan to look at the roadway into the soccer complex? I know it's one that's really, really bad.
Through your worship, our agreement with minor soccer does does ask us to work together with them to develop a 5-year capital strategy. They haven't identified the road. In fact, I think minor soccer would say, the road is at an acceptable level. They did use grindings from a asphalt resurfacing project in the last few years to upgrade that. So I think they would say, we'd like to put our money into fields as opposed to the road. So it hasn't been identified in the projects at this time. The next project is a project again at the soccer complex, a 50-50 partnership, and it's installing walking trails at the complex. So it should read total budget $2,000, $1,000 each from city and minor soccer.
I would speak to the fact that we have a trail system that is right adjoining it to the west and then to the south in the old CP rail line. This is one that I have circled, and engineers in the past have reiterated to me, if thou builds it, thou shalt maintain it. There's ongoing costs. It looks like an expansion of our footprint right now, and I'm cognizant of the size of that footprint, so I would motion that we have an acceptable path to walk right next to it, and that we would remove this.
It states here that this is a part of the overall 5-year capital plan for the work. So is this one segment of what would be an ongoing capital?
This would not be ongoing. This was for this year, work to be done through the Outside Minor Soccer Association. This was requested by them.
And I certainly appreciate the councillor's comment. You'll see in the picture the rail trail runs immediately proximate and south of the soccer complex. I think this is more of an internal trail project. Right now, pedestrians and drivers, automobiles are sharing the same route within the complex. This would get the pedestrians off of those roadways, which can be quite busy on busy nights at the complex.
Do we know who's going to maintain it?
I guess it would probably, they have a staff person out there. The city also has a project. If council's direction was to fund it with a caveat in the agreement, and we do an annual review that, the maintenance of the trail would be their responsibility, we could certainly explore that with the Minor Soccer Association.
To eliminate this, put it aside?
I just wondered if we can amend the motion to include that they maintain it as opposed to eliminating it. So that's totally different than what you want. It's only $1,000 for a muss, right?
Well, 2,000.
1,000.
1,000.
Oh, 1,000. Yeah, that would be acceptable. I don't think we want to take on further obligations. Councillor Merton spoke many times to trying to identify when we always hear about the cost savings, but it's hard to quantify where those are, and additional maintenance like this just consumes any savings that we've had thrust upon us the last 3 hours. So, yeah, I think that's acceptable, and I'd amend the motion to that. That we include this in the budget with the additional need for maintenance to be done at the cost subject to Owen Sound Minor Soccer, assuming that.
Be clear, if Owen Sound Minor Soccer doesn't agree to this means we aren't doing it. What happens next year, the year after? I get your point, but I'm not sure how you enforce it.
If they were not to choose to take on the maintenance, it would be council's purview each year to either accept it or decline it. But if they were not to do that, then we just decline it.
The next project is a general trails. It's at Kelso Beach, and really it's the trail that will connect from the existing paved path along the north side of the Kelso Beach property where we neighbor with the Georgian Shores Marina, and then turn right. So we did a nice upgrade on the rail trail portion that's on the west side of the marina, and this will connect those two paths a little better, and it will be done by park staff. No, contractor. The next project is at Greenwood Cemetery, and this is the chapel built in 1900. It really has been left unused for many years. The interior had been sort of partially demolished. The proposal is to use the space as an indoor columbarium for niches, and the first part of the project would be a structural assessment and design for the work for the chapel, and then you'll see next year in the capital budget the actual work and the installation of the columbarium niches.
At what point does a building have the option of being designated as historic?
I'm pretty sure Greenwood Cemetery is a cultural heritage landscape. These buildings are listed, so there's two types of heritage buildings. One are designated, the other is listed. I'm fairly certain these are listed buildings, but I could let you know. And then council has the ability to designate buildings or landscapes.
Does that open up opportunities for funding for projects like this?
It may, yeah.
So if we could explore that further, please. That would be my first motion. I'm not sure how to phrase that.
That maybe that staff would explore the future designation of buildings at Greenwood Cemetery and explore funding opportunities through grants and other programs.
Yes, please.
It's $25,000 for a building which, quote, has not been used for many years. And that's just a start, correct? The 25.
That would be doing the engineering and the design.
So
Yeah.
to anticipate something Wayne hinted at earlier about all the buildings the city owns, what prevents us from just knocking this thing over, to be blunt? If nobody's using it, why are we preserving an antique that nobody's using? Because if that's the engineering, is anybody here doubtful that it'll be an extra 200 to 300 to do the recommended work? I'm just asking in an age of limited funds. I don't like knocking down chapels.
Yeah. Through your worship, the chapel did have meaningful purpose and was used for many years. Since I've been at the city, I've not known that it was used for service, quite frankly, because it had fallen into disrepair. And, you know, part of our strategic plan says that we want to preserve our heritage, our stories, our built infrastructure. I guess I would say to you, the most important thing for a heritage building is for it to have a meaningful purpose and a use. So developing a plan for indoor columbarium niches that would really, and we would, you know, we've done a bit of a business plan in terms of how much is that going to cost, how much can we sell them for, and what does that look like in terms of funding this project. So we're, you know, as opposed to, you know, as you say, knocking the building down, we're looking to find a meaningful and purposeful reuse for the building.
But do you seriously think that any such fees that people would pay would come close to contributing to hundreds of thousands for the rebuild? I'm just asking the question. I don't know the answer.
We understand, and Adam's certainly more of an expert in cemeteries than I am, that indoor columbarium niches would sell far more at a higher price than the outdoor niches do, much like the mausoleum and those indoor crypts. So the idea would that the niches would fund much of the interior work. There is, you know, funding at the cemetery through the fees that are paid there for ongoing maintenance for buildings like this.
Can you just read the motion again, please?
That staff would explore the designation of the buildings at Greenwood Cemetery and explore funding or grant funding opportunities for this project. What do you have, Brianna?
I could, Your Worship. The roof's in good shape, Alan.
Pardon me?
The roof is in good shape.
Yeah, the roof was done, I'm going to say, within the last 5 years.
So if this didn't go this year, we could wait another year, and perhaps with the designation, we might find funding. If council's somewhat concerned about it, we could go ahead with the motion again. We do the designation, we look for funding. If we get the funding, we go ahead with this phase. If not, it will be back next year. I should mention to council, certainly with new councils, part of our goal is to get you out on a bus and take you to a number of our facilities that many of you will not have seen yet. I think the cemetery would be one stop, and seeing the building would give you more appreciation for what is actually there in character. But unfortunately, with the election and the time of year and the other things the staff had going, we couldn't get you out there. So you will get a tour of all of our facilities that are of main interest to you, but throwing that option out there for this one.
Yes, I had my hand up before Councillor Merton, but that's okay, because it was the exact same thing. And concluding with, could the facade not be designated, and then the rest could still be used for the purpose that we want to generate revenue? And I would like to see this delayed for a year until we get those reports back. But Councillor Merton has a motion on the floor we need to deal with first. I would like to move that we delay this project for a year, and once we receive the information on designation, then look at it again.
The next, oh, Sorry, the next project is the cemetery water system. There's several areas at Greenwood where the watering system just doesn't work, and this would replace and repair those areas. Cemetery workshop eave replacement, we just ran out of time. It's supposed to have ice clips on the roof to prevent falling ice in the winter and the warmer periods. Heritage fencing, this would, I think, complete the heritage fencing program at Greenwood in accordance with the master plan. Timber MacArthur is a play structure. Timber MacArthur Parks along Fifth Avenue East, and this existing play structure, it's a life cycle replacement.
What I'd like to learn more about here is what do we follow in terms of play structure codes and so forth? Like, can some of this be reused and new slides are purchased and some new peripheral equipment? Like, it can't cost $60,000 to buy some slides and some peripheral equipment. Like, what would $25,000 look like? Because there's another park in here at $25,000. So, like, what is the level that we're holding ourselves to? I know a couple of years ago, one of the worst injuries I saw to a child was sustained at the brand new Ryerson Park. And I mean, there's a brand new park to today's specifications, and I thought the kid was hit by a baseball bat in the face, to be frank. So it's like, is there a lower classification that we can go to in terms of pricing out the scope of these parks, or what's behind what's the motivating drivers here for cost?
I will ask Adam to comment on this because there's certified playground inspectors. There is it's a CSA standard that we work to achieve with our playgrounds with routine maintenance and capital expenditures. This play structure, as soon as you start to sort of modify it, then you're required to meet the current standards. So
Yes, so we work to the Canadian CSA standard for playgrounds. That's industry standard across all municipalities in Canada and especially in Ontario. That manual defines every component and spacing and elevation change in the playground. We do look at replacing components, and you'll see later in this capital request that there's a major component replacement program that we're initiating this year for those playgrounds where we can replace components. Timber MacArthur is a playground that needs to be completely removed, and replacing with something similar is in that vein of $60,000 playground equipment. It's expensive when it's developed to that Canadian standard.
Marion wants to go first. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just on that same venue, when you're replacing, I know there's been a lot of concerns of people with the metal slides and the heat of the slides, the children going down those slides. Is that being looked at?
Yes, that would be part of the major component replacement program. They don't make metal slides anymore. They replace them.
So I understand the fact that it would be a total replacement to meet new standards, but when you look at last year's budget, and I'm going to pull something that Scott just did recently, but last year we had that budget alignment set for $26,000. For an increase of $34,000, I would expect that maybe inflation to come into play, but what would be the change of mindset from what was in the budget last year to this year?
For Timber MacArthur?
For Timber MacArthur.
The change would be some upgrade to their playground surfacing and more accurate pricing on the playground equipment.
So I guess my next question would be, you talked about later on, you said there, and I know I'm going to be jumping around here, but it says there's a major component replacement for $7,500. Then knowing in the operating budget, there's also a maintenance and repair budget for playgrounds. Would none of those things also impact some of these?
So the major component replacement is a result of our review of all the playgrounds, and there's certain ones that have been identified by COVID at the end of last year to say those we need to replace for this many dollars. And we see that as an ongoing program to make sure we're maintaining the equipment we have, because we have fallen into a state where some of our equipment hasn't been maintained as regularly as we would want to do that.
Well, I guess I'd respond back to saying, okay, yes, you're saying there's maintaining, if that's what that would be for, then what is the maintaining of, and out of the operating budget for 10,000?
So in the operating budget, we have, so we might go to a playground, and I'll use Harrison Park, the new Kiwanis playground, where there's those stepping, you kind of hold on and you put your feet on a round circle. You'll see that those parts will get worn. They're almost like a washer, but they're much more expensive than a washer. So when we go and inspect and those rungs are starting to wear through, we have to order maybe 15 new pieces so that we ensure that that stays operational. So in the operating budget, the maintenance around playgrounds are things like that. You probably wouldn't go there and notice anything different. We have another capital project where the swings at the Bayshore Accessible Playground have sort of exceeded their useful life, and so that's a major component replacement. So we have those pieces in there so that simply the parks operations budget doesn't have enough wiggle room to be able to say, well, we're going to spend $3,000 on playground equipment. It does seem to me, and you know, everything's expensive. Playgrounds, the component parts are expensive.
What about usage? How much is this park being used?
We did do a 2018 Recreation Parks and Facilities Master Plan. Part of that looked at the location of playgrounds in neighborhoods, and the goal of the master plan was to ensure that we had a playground roughly within 500 meters of every neighborhood. This is a playground that factors into that, so it is important in terms of continuing to achieve the standard that is reflected in the master plan that you developed in consultation with the public.
Just a quick question. And to increase the use of this park, one thing that jumps out at me, years ago, people used to be able to take in a Canada Day fireworks from north of there, and it was wonderful. And the trees have all grown up there now. Is there anything we can do with tree cutting to expose that view a little bit more and get, you know, a night like that would have hundreds of kids there. Like, it would just be amazing. People would discover it, but but is the tree cutting something that the city even has ability?
Right. We generally try not to cut trees in the area where it's hazard.
Sorry, if I could just make a point to Councillor Gregg's question is, in the 5-year forecast, there's a trail link development that goes across that park to try and help increase traffic, so we're contemplating use of that space.
Sorry, but to Councillor O'Leary's point, do we know how many people use this park? Or not?
We didn't, when we did the master plan update, we didn't do exact use numbers. What the master plan did was establish a criteria and say, generally for a neighborhood park, people are willing to walk about 500 meters to get to a neighborhood park. And the idea was that we should have a play structure within 500 meters. So I can't comment on use. Over time, the composition of neighborhoods changes. Sometimes you'll see them start younger and there'll be a bunch of kids, and then they'll get older, and then young families start to buy those houses. So these are always, in transition over the life cycle of parks and playground structures. So I guess all I'm saying is we don't know exactly how many people use it. We do know that it's an important piece in terms of achieving that objective of having a play structure within 500 meters.
So the reality is, it could maybe not be used at all until Travis gets his house built and starts having kids. Because his lot's right there.
The next project is the Harrison Park Tot Lot Playground. This is a project that really should be considered with the next project as well. There's two smaller playgrounds, one right near the inn that's been traditionally used by smaller, younger children, as well as a small playground back in the campground area. Together with the Kiwanis Club, we have applied for an enabling accessibility grant. So the grant amount would be $376,000, Kiwanis $100,000, the city $100,000. The joint cost of those two projects is $576. So there are some numerical kind of reporting issues. So taxation between the two projects, total 100 Kiwanis, 376 from Enabling Accessibility Grant. So that's the one grant we're waiting to hear from. Total tax for the two projects is 100. The next project,
Just before we
sorry.
move on in these, I don't remember the campground one being a high priority before, and all of a sudden we're at very high. Do we know, first of all, do we recall what we spent, what the cost was of the Kiwanis Park that's just across the wading pool on the island?
I want to say that project was about 370, about 400, almost 500,000. Maybe the city's contribution was 3. We'll check.
But well, that, no,
Yep.
that just gives me an approximate, so it's, we're in the ballpark. Do we know if we're getting the grants?
We don't. No, we're
Do we
waiting
know
to hear.
when we'll get the, when we will know?
We're supposed to hear in January, so.
Well, so we may know before we get this budget approved. Okay, thanks.
We talked a little bit about major component replacement. These are the replacement of the saucer swings at the J. Irvine Brown Park. Sorry, is this at J. Irvine Brown? Yes. Yes, at the Bay Shore. Certainly, I can tell you this park is well used. Major component replacement, so as we talked, our operating budget really doesn't support ordering those component replacements, which is really your strategic investment to extend the life of those playgrounds. So that's what this is for. So I can't give you an itemized list. It will be based on staff's inspection of those playgrounds. Just
I'm looking to Kate for assistance, but as we were going through the playground, the upgrades, the changes, if I have the numbers correct, our taxation burden for those comes to $222,000 for those projects, correct?
Yes, less the 50,000 that Pam has identified, so it's actually 172,500 if we make that correction.
Thank you.
Yeah, very quick, Pam, and this is probably to Kate as well, and if this is part of an operating budget issue, that's fine. During the election, several people asked me, is the campground paying for itself, or is it a drain on the city? And when I see, if you go back a couple slides, we don't need to, but there was some playground equipment specific to the campground. Is that a question that can be easily answered or not? Or would you rather deal with that in operating?
We do have, there is a transfer from the camp, you'll see the operating budget for the campground. We are putting the fees up. This year, there's a surplus, Kate, of what in the campground operating budget?
I believe this year we were able to put close to $30,000 from operations into the campground reserve. So those projects that we discussed just earlier today related to the campground, all of those projects are funded through that campground reserve that has been built up through the operating fund.
We also take.
Oh, okay, so that would include just 2 slides ago, that playground equipment as well? Or, because that wasn't made clear to me that we had reserved funds for that.
No, sorry, it wasn't
Okay.
that piece of equipment, but the other campground capital that we discussed earlier.
Okay.
We had a small washroom renovation, site posts, kitchen reporting, all of those sort of small campground jobs are fully funded through the campground reserve, which has been created through those registration revenues, or another way of looking at that is the surplus generated from campground operations.
If I could, Your Worship, on a cash basis, it probably makes $40,000 a year on a cash basis. There's no amortization of depreciable assets included.
We also take $10,000 from that budget and put it into the operation of the pool, which, really is for everybody.
So I just have a general question. How many jobs do you think our in-house contractors can actually do in a full 12-month cycle?
So Kristen has a pretty great schedule for her staff and exactly what they're going to be doing in terms of, you know, each month and the projects that they're going to take on. So I think we're confident that the staff we have, those 2 facility staff, can accomplish the capital program that's presented to council.
Because I just, and that's fair, I'm just saying right now, since we've started this discussion, we've talked about the Harrison Park shop washroom, the Duncan Fieldhouse, which has started, the Centennial Tower decking,
Yep.
Kelso Beach campground washroom, Harrison Park campground washroom, Harrison Park kitchen building, Harrison Park laundromats, Harrison Park bridges, Harrison Park in-washroom, and the Bayshore gazebo. That seems like a lot of jobs to get done in a 12-month cycle when we know how extensive some of that work is going to be.
And again, and I can't remember which councillor asked that, as well, is that when we look at our work plan, is that we take all of that into consideration. Some projects, like, I'll use for example, the kitchen and the laundromat at Harrison Park, $2,000 is not much money, it's not for the staff, labor intensive. Keep in mind that some of those jobs as well are not just for property staff, but we also utilize our staff as well for that. So that goes up then, you know, flex, it's full-time people, cemetery staff, sometimes they carry out some capital work as well.
So my thing is, last year we had a projection because we had some carry forwards, obviously, into this year of projects that we were going to do because some of that stuff was utilized in the City Hall renovation. Is there any other surprises that when we come back into 2020 renovate or 2020 budget that is there going to be any surprises why none of these should literally be on the list again?
Right. I will never guarantee 100% that I will have a carry forward project for next year. I just won't do that. I think that we set our schedule and our projects to what we feel that we can attain, and that we want to set ourselves up for fail. Sometimes things do come up and we have to prioritize. There are a handful of projects that we carry forward because we have along the way, through the duration of the year, said, forget about that, guys. That one is not going to break us if we do not get it done, and we focus on ones that we absolutely have to get done. So that happens.
So but me thinking, we're coming into a budget that's got an ugly number to it. We've got 15 jobs here. If we already forecast and know that we can't really do all 15 of those jobs, and you're saying, yes, we could, you can't give me 100%, which is fair enough, no one can give you 100%, but if you know you're going to do 80, why are we budgeting for 20?
If I could help perhaps, Councillor, I think what Kristen and Pam are telling you, they're confident what's on that budget, if you approve it, they will get done. Not going to guarantee it, they're confident they will. What may happen throughout the year, and it does happen across our business, something comes foreseen, we have a lot of old product out there, and something comes along and we've hoped it wouldn't go, but it went. It could be a building, it could be something Kristen's people could help with, it could be something Dennis's people can help with. We discuss it as a team and we say, well, we have to fix that. So this particular project will not get done because we're putting our forces on that one that we have to get done, and it wasn't budgeted for. That may come up this year because, quite frankly, we have a lot of old buildings, old product in the ground out there, but I think what they're telling you, if you approve this budget, they're confident their staff will get it done.
I appreciate that. My only rebuttal with that will be, come 2020, if any of those are on a carry forward, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to put those into reserve. And we'll shut those down for a whole debate again about what projects are going to go forward with the 2020. Because if we're over-predicting what we're going to be capable of doing, then we need to make a note of that and say, we aren't superheroes, so we can't do everything. This is our wish list, but if we have to break it down over 2 years, then we have to do that. So I'm just stating, I will go ahead with that, but if there's something that's back in 2020, and those are on carry forwards, I'm going to be holding someone's feet to the fire.
Trust me, Councillor, I appreciate those comments completely. They support what I have been saying, and our staff has. I'm glad our staff can hear that, quite frankly, from your side of the table. So I appreciate those comments.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to community services. So, the first project is a designated plaque. It's $2,500. Interpretive plaques help to tell our story as a community, and this would add a plaque in that series of interpretive plaques. The wording would go through committee.
Just a quick point on that. Can we build on that plaque program? We've improved our website with the heritage information. Is it something that we can look at putting the like a little smart tag on it, so then actually we can actually then see the individuals who are looking at it, and then drive them back to our website as well for more information? Because
Yeah.
right now we use that paper unfolded, and I'm not sure how effective that is, or maybe it's kind of effective, the old historical walking tour, but
Right.
with
No,
today's smartphones and the capability, I wonder if we can drive it back, and then we can actually see, maybe there's like 4,200 people a year like hit that smart tag.
Yeah, I think the last plaque that we had designed did include that QR code. The official plan 5-year review, this is a legislative requirement that we update our plan every 5 years. In my opinion, good, sound, up-to-date planning policy is critical to strong growth and development in our community, and this will be a consultant to do that work. We did do 2 studies this year, the commercial needs study and the second one's escaping me. Commercial policy, the Parks Master Plan, that are important sort of information for that review.
So will this be done all in 2019, and is this the total budget for it, or will there be addition in 2020?
We're anticipating that it would be completed this year, and that will be the budget.
For those of us that are new on council, can you assist us, the $60,000 for a consultant, is there a reason some of that can't be done in-house? I'm just curious. It strikes me as official plans are created fundamentally from the end.
Yeah, certainly while we will hire a consultant, we will have a vacancy in our planning department come the end of the month, so we're going to be very short-staffed. Originally, last year, staff had thought this might be a project that we would take on ourselves. I can tell you whether it's a Parks Master Plan, a Rec Facilities Master Plan, or an official plan, staff are in there with our sleeves rolled up. It's an incredible amount of work, even though we do have a consultant. So to allow staff the time they need to work on development planning, the policy planning piece, community involvement is integral to that process, and staff will be in there, but I just don't feel, it wouldn't be fair to staff to ask them, in my opinion, to undertake this review. The next project is digitizing building plans for Amanda. So our Amanda system allows us to tie scanned records to those files. So it would be having somebody and then scanning these files and attaching them, and also some of them are so old that they can't go through our scanner. They have to go out to a flat scanner to be scanned and digitized, so that would be part of that project. This is part of our marketing and promotion. In the text, I've got a correction here. This would allow about 5 videos. They're about $2,000 a video, and the videos really are, we had huge success this year in the 3 videos that we did. Young entrepreneurs, sort of a snapshot of the downtown, and then success in local manufacturing, and that video is still to be launched, but I think a real important part of our community development efforts.
Question, what's this in capital, not in operations? This seems like a business expense that...
If council, sometimes we put, it goes to volume. It's just not supported in the operating budget. If you wanted to bump up operating and reduce capital, it's really...
It doesn't really matter,
It may not happen 5 years from now, so then you build it into your operating and...
One year at a time, all right.
Mr. Your Worship, we just go back again, $60,000 for an official plan update. First of all, have you used consultants in previous years?
We did, when we
And
did...
do you anticipate using the same one and so forth? Okay.
We will do an RFP
Okay.
and score them, and that the recommendation at $60,000, Kate, remind me, will that come forward to council, or will it be just, no, it won't. So, but the RFP will be developed with a scoring tool. It'll be scored by a variety of staff, and then it'll be awarded on that basis.
It just seems to me, and I've read these reports in the past, it just seems to me a big chunk of change, and I would hope that it's not simply largely boilerplate, the update. I guess I look forward to reading it, but it just strikes me as a lot of money to pay out to consultant.
Yeah, I think you're on community services, so that committee will be a big part of the public meetings and the public consultation. That'll be part of that plan.
I recognize the importance of using a consultant as an expert to help review. What the public want to know is, what are we getting for that money? As part of your RFP, would you consider having an opportunity or a template developed so at the end of the 5 years or along the process, there's a feedback loop to say, this was the plan, this is what we accomplished. We need a report card coming out of these, the money we spend for consultants to say, yeah, it mattered, it made a difference, and this is what the tax dollars got out of this. That's my ask.
I completely agree. The official plan really is council's contract with your community about how Owen Sound's going to grow and develop. Having strong positive growth and development in Owen Sound, including our own capital project that's consistent with that, is incredibly important. The plan will include a monitoring component, and that is a big part of it.
So Pam, maybe if we step back, explain what's in the official plan, or
an official plan includes really a section usually on the front end about your goals and objectives of a community. So it'll have economy, environment, the downtown, urban design. I'll be missing some. There's a schedule to the plan that identifies the land use designations, and then what are the uses that are contemplated, and then what are the policies. And often the plan also tries to sort of foreshadow and say, hey, if you're going to have an official plan amendment or a zoning amendment, here's the criteria that the community thinks are important. So if you're going to have a building that wants to be higher in your downtown, you're going to need a shadowing study and an urban design study that go along with that. So that policy is embodied in that plan and really important. You can then see how it will influence the growth.
just to comment on John, when we get to these budget times, certainly 2 years ago, we went through a service review and tried to look at our staff and make sure it was efficient. To be efficient, you've got staff that are working all the time, that are filling the gap, doing their daily jobs, doing their planning, doing their site plan approvals, doing the subdivision approvals, doing all those things that go on day to day to day. And certainly with the amount of interest that we've had in site plans in the last couple of years, staff have been probably overworked to a certain extent of the things that have come in. To throw in these projects every 5 years, with an interim every 5 years, I can't remember, on something as big as this, we don't have the staff, they don't have the capacity to do it in 5% of their time or that extra 10%, because they may not have that 10% of free time, but they wouldn't be able to do it in that. It's a pretty heavy document. It really rules everything that the planning department does for the next 5 years. To a certain extent, every so often, I can't remember, it has to be redone every 10 years.
Every 5 years is a review. The changes to the Planning Act now say 10.
But it has to be redone every 10 and reviewed every 5. This is a redo, not a review.
This is an update.
So it's just an update. So to a certain extent, you are using the plan that you have already and updating it to what the changes have happened in your community. We'll constantly have applications to Committee of Adjustments for things, or I guess some things come to council too, don't they? Where we'll have an amendment to the official plan because we didn't foresee this happening. Those things happen, but you're trying to bring it up to speed, and it would be really hard for our staff to do it in-house. We really don't have the capacity, and I'll
put a nickel in my pocket with a piece of paper wrapped around it telling you who we're going to hire, because it will come down to whoever wins the RFP, but quite often we know, because we've got one that knows the city very well, that he is a leading person that's pretty reliable, but we'll see when it happens.
Thank you. My only concern is when we get a consultant, I think Madam Merton said the same thing, I'd like to see some value, that's it. So I wait with bated breath to see what $60,000 buys us. And I've seen some reports, not from our municipality, from others, I've seen other updates. They charge an arm and a leg for community consulting. They produce a report that's largely boilerplate, that goes over old ground a second, third time, that perhaps wasn't tilled enough the first time. I'm not saying we can't get value for it, but I'll be just waiting to see what $60,000 buys us. That's my comment.
Yes, sorry. So you're saying that every 5 years, we can anticipate a costing of approximately $60,000?
Through your worship, my understanding of the legislative changes to the Planning Act are now that the official plan would only be mandated to be reviewed every 10 years, but I'll just double check the legislation and make sure I don't have that wrong.
So as an ongoing expense, knowing that it's mandated, should we not start putting money away? Because we know every year it's going to, this will be an anticipated cost.
We do sometimes have money in the development charge reserves for the official plan review. I think right now the development charge pot of money with respect to studies is depleted, so there's no money in development charges for this study. I guess it's, you can do it, you can pay for it ahead, or you can pay for it in year,
Sorry. So Pam, is the update just on the Planning Act changes within that 5 years?
So
there's more to it.
Yeah, there's much more to it.
Okay,
It'll include
that's
consultation, changes in the Sydenham Heights area that have been, the ability to service, or council servicing of that area will impact the developability, the stress on density.
Yeah, so
will certainly be
lots.
part of it.
Okay, good, thanks.
Okay, so switching gears to facilities. This is the north end of the Bay Shore. The Bay Shore is a 36-year-old building now. These are the north entrance doors. There's 7 of them. The frame and the doors, it's a life cycle replacement. Safety relief valves. These are a TSSA requirement. There's 2 of them at the Bay Shore that require replacing. This is the interior overhead door at the Bay Shore. It's ready for replacement, and it would be insulated to keep the people who sit in section A and Z a little bit warmer. This is something that the previous council had asked us to look at. We have a mock-up that we want to install at the Bay Shore. We hear about the need for handrails in those sections to assist people who are getting to and from their seats. So once we have the mock-up, we want to install it in certain sections at the Bay Shore and give it a try and see how it works.
Thank you, Worship. I do remember we had this discussion in the past as well, but one thing we were concerned with was potentially if that goes in place, that changes the width of the stairwell, and if that was going to meet regulations. And we found out whether or not that putting a handrail in there actually.
Right, so we met with the CEO there at the Bay Shore, we gave him the idea of what we were looking for. And he said that there's no issue with what we couldn't do is install it in the middle of the stairwell when it's not wide enough for egress purposes. So what we'll do is it's similar to this picture that's shown in here, almost like the shape of a P, but what we would do is actually install it probably perhaps behind one of the chairs that are in place there as to not affect the aisle.
Not just,
We're not 100% sure yet, so we're gonna get the prototype or the mock-up made, and then probably bring the parties back together with regards to our staff, CPO, and perhaps a rep for fire as well as fire prevention, just to get an idea to make sure that we're satisfied.
so you said you're going to put them in behind the seat so they stick out?
Yes.
Okay, so, if you're doing it on both sides of the aisle, then it won't be $10,000. Where are you getting the $10,000 from with,
No, the mock-up will not be $10,000. What we were looking at, the request that came through last year was to explore options, not to do the entire arena, but to be able to do one or two sections where we have the request for mobility issues.
Okay.
So once we get the mock-up, and then we know what that price is, what we would like to do is see how far $10,000 will get us in those high traffic areas where we've had no customers.
thanks.
The next, oh, sorry.
So installing these at the seating, how does this not impede the person sitting there?
Well, and again, I can't answer anything until we have that mock-up and bring those parties together to review everything on site.
But certainly we want to make sure that people can still get into those aisles. So the next project is the office space and storage space at the Bay Shore, reorganizing it. So it basically starts, the very left room is the pool room. The next room is, there's a combination of offices, washrooms, storage, staff, lunchroom, and a bit of a tool space. That space isn't used efficiently. We've got tables right now that sit in the hallway that I would call the Sports Hall of Fame. The project will be done in-house. It will reorganize that space so that the storage of those tables can be done in there and make sure that our staff there are able to provide good customer service in terms of that they're not sort of behind another office that's now vacant. This is a Bay Shore surveillance system. When we have to access the Bay Shore surveillance system under the MFIPA, the quality of the video is very poor. So this would be a new system there tied into the City Hall sort of brains of the system, but the cameras, this would upgrade those at the Bay Shore, and our own IT staff would install this project. Bay Shore Pro Ice System, this is the system. It's a reverse osmosis system. It basically treats and cleans the water so that the quality of the ice at the Bay Shore meets the standards that an OHL rink is expected to meet.
Sorry, Pam, can we just back up one? On those cameras, if that's in the attacks contract, it is, correct?
It's not in the attack contract, we checked.
Why are they paying then?
They're not paying. Or are they paying half? No. Oh, sorry.
They own them?
They have their own security system or surveillance system, or the attack system, so if an incident occurs, and just correct me if I'm wrong, Pam, but if an incident occurs, then we go through the attack to review their surveillance.
And when you
But
do,
it's
they
very,
never,
very poor quality.
and they never work?
And the location of the cameras perhaps isn't ideal to some of the incidents that we have.
Yeah.
So this system would be done in consultation with our IT department, much like what we have in this building, then as well as that we then earn with other people.
Right, okay, thanks.
So next is a second year of last year, and it should have a 19 number. Last year, we spent the money, we bought tools. Staff at the Bay Shore have lots of jobs to do. We had aging tool inventory or non-existent staff often brought it from home. I can tell you that Mark Kazarian watches flyers and gets the best deal on the tools and equipment we need. So you certainly maximize any investment there through this project. Oh, sorry. The Pro Ice system is the reverse osmosis system. It ensures that the water that's used for flooding is creating ice at an OHL, or a standard suitable to the Bay Shore.
On the tools, what security will be put in place to make sure that these tools don't go walking?
The pictures that are shown there are actually in locked staff areas, so they're actually under lock and key, I'll say, in a secure area where members of the public aren't going to access. That would be.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So still on the tools, last year, or whenever we did the tour, we were up at the Works Department, and one of the mechanics was showing me his own $10,000 toolbox. It's beautiful. and I'm sure he told me that they use their own tools, correct?
Many mechanics do.
So where do we draw the line? Like, why are we spending $5,000 on tools at the Bay Shore and then making guys at the Works Department buy their own tools? Like, where's the consistency there? Or do I have the wrong information?
Thank you, Your Worship. I mean, it's standard practice for mechanics when you hire a mechanic to have their own tool set. And they do have a tool, what do you call it, allowance to help recover some of the tools that they break on site. But in most cases, when you hire a senior mechanic, he comes with a set of tools. And you'll find that across the country in every facility, every type of business, every type of institution. That's why you hire those people.
Thank you.
Next is the Bay Shore Table and Chair Replacement Program. We've made a lot of efforts to upgrade the Bay Shore as well as market and promote it for weddings and other events. And the replacement of the tables and chairs will go along with those marketing efforts and are certainly in line with our goal of increasing use and rentals. Painting the stage at the Bay Shore, the stage, these pictures really don't do it justice. It doesn't look great, and so a contractor would be used to prepare and paint the stage with a special material that's pretty durable. This is the grease pit in the kitchen. Our contractor tells us, who does the emptying of the grease pit, says it's starting to rust out and has exceeded its useful life and it needs to be replaced. So moving up to the Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Center, this would replace the 10 existing bollard lights that are out front with bollard lights that are more durable and more energy efficient. Unfortunately, the bollards that were installed when the building was built 6+ years ago just were not durable, and they're subject to vandalism. So something that's a little more durable and can't be kicked over. The next project is rubberized flooring in the area in front of the bleachers. And you might say, well, why don't you use the change rooms when we have large school groups and public skating? People just choose to put their skates on in those seats. Our staff do put down mats, but this will allow, those mats cause sort of a trip hazard, and this will be a rubberized flooring and really help those users of our facility.
Hey, I'm just in comparison, so at the Bay Shore, we don't have rubber anywhere near the seats, but
No.
we don't have the same problem?
We just don't have the same problem there because there's really not sort of bleachers that are open with cement flooring. I guess, you know, there is some room in the hallways there where children may have people tying up skates, but we just don't experience the same issue.
So there's not, like, if we had schools coming and we
Yep.
just put a chain across there with a sign and made them use the dressing room, it really doesn't fit then. You'd have too many, probably have too
You'd
many
have a
kids.
lot of kids for the change rooms for public skating and for school groups.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, my question on that is this both ice pads or east pad only, west pad only?
It would be both
And
pads.
what's the utilization of public skating on one versus the other?
We book public skating, you know, sometimes when the schools come, they actually use both pads at the same time. So we don't, you know, we book public skating up there on one pad or the other. So. Or New Year's Eve was another, you know, sort of busy night. But lots of times, if you're up there on a free skating day, a Tim Hortons day, or a Sunday sponsored skate, there's a lot of people in the building.
Okay, so as we could complete this in-house, I would consider and make a motion that we half this to 5,000 so that we can look at one pad per year, as opposed to doing both the first year.
We could specifically say, like, the one ice pad comes out, correct?
We take one pad out on a cycle of about 4 years in, 1 year out. There's one floor that's finished at a higher level, but we still like to get that east pad out from time to time. Or sorry, the west pad generally stays in. About every fourth year, the west pad comes out.
So this flooring could be removed, though? No? It's down. Okay, we can have a discussion, but I'm just wondering if that rotates every 4 years, so for the next 4 years, we've got rubber down on an ice surface that's not an ice surface.
It's not a big deal in the summer. We don't have, well, we do have hockey schools, but they don't have the same volume of skating as a public skate would have during the winter months.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried.
Okay, the next project is an engineering study funded through a grant program. It would take an undertake an energy conservation and demand management program. The equipment at the Julie MacArthur is high-end, high-energy efficient equipment, and this study will ensure that this equipment is functioning at as an efficient level as it can be. The next project is the water bottle filling station program, fulfilling a motion by council to install 3 of these units in different facilities each year. So this continues that incentive.
Councillor Gregg.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Deputy Mayor O'Leary. Right off the bat, in September 2017, I was a big proponent of phasing out plastic, still am. And this was part and parcel of that direction of committee and council. But I feel like in 2017, there was no budget allocation for this plan. It came late in the year, and the direction was then that we supported $10,000 a year for it. Actually, when it was first brought on, I was under the opinion that it was $10,000 for a water refilling station. Then in 2018, we put 3 into City Hall, which I interpret that as a city facility. But we also then did, where last year? The library?
Library, which was paid for by the library. We put 1 at tourism. I think there's 1 at the wastewater treatment plant and 1 going into the Bay Shore if it hasn't gone in yet. Is that right?
Yeah, the 1 at the Bay Shore. So just to speak to that, so the 3 at City Hall were actually part of the renovation project that was not included in the 2018 $10,000 approved capital. So then we had 3 that we had installed, and I should have the list in front of me, but Bay Shore, tourism, water treatment plant,
Library.
we did the 4 last year.
Library was funded by the library.
By the library.
Yeah, they paid for
But ultimately, most of that's coming from the city. Yeah. What's the proposed location for 2019?
I'm not. Oh,
Because I think we have fulfilled initially right off the bat, you know, whether it was already unbeknownst to us that we were putting them in this building, we put 3 in. We came through on what we had obligated ourselves to, and then we went far above and beyond that last year, I think.
So you think we're on pace for finishing well before the 5 years then?
I'd like to know what we're doing this year, because I would have no problems saying, okay, the budget for this should be $5,000 or $3,500, because we really accelerated ourselves last year. In 2017's budget, we had no plans on doing any.
Or skip a year and save 10.
Yeah.
Kristen, do you have the list?
Yeah, I believe this program was developed, the first year was in 2008. So I had missed the transit terminal as the other location for 2018. So for 2019, we have 1 scheduled for, and this is up for discussion for the council work committee. Duncan, the Harrison Park Workshop, the Julie MacArthur Rec Center, which I think actually we might not need 1 here. The Qantas Soccer Club,
Did we not put a number on this? Like, how many are we doing?
We'd have to go back to that resolution from committee. Do you happen to have that, Kate? Yeah, from council.
Like, I thought
We'd have
for
to go
some
back.
reason-
I don't
For some reason, I
recall.
thought there was only 6 or 7, not 16 or 17. Like,
What I recall from the resolution, and again, not for work, was $10,000 a year for 5 years, and that, I believe, came through non-corporate services.
It actually, well, it sort of did both, and then finally, council had the final resolution.
yeah,
I
no,
think,
that
so we
does,
could
that does ring a bell, $10,000 a year for 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the city hall was not part of that. The 3 that were
Right.
here were included in the capital budget for the
Yeah.
renovation project.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay.
I'd like to further, I'd like to make a motion to this, that we set aside this $10,000 until we get a grasp on what is the locations we'd like to spend it on, instead of just spending it just to put a refill station in here, there, and everywhere. I mean, ultimately, at the Bay Shore, 3 might be the number, and that was in the original committee report because of the potential number of people in the building. But in a way, until you've got a lineup of 10 or 12 people waiting to use the one refill station that's there, why would you put a second or a third in just for the sake of doing it? I mean, once you see there's a demonstrated need, then let's do it. But I think right now we really accelerated ourselves last year, and we can step back on this.
As environmental stewards, I'm assuming that that motion by council, and I know Brianna's hoping to get that up for us.
She's looking.
Was to demonstrate the city's commitment towards moving away from plastic. So I understand about the numbers and the investment, but if the intention was to demonstrate that we are environmental stewards, then should we not consider this in addition to the numbers and the filling stations? On the flip side, I go back to, are we measuring whether this really is achieving our intentionality? Are we seeing less plastic bottles in the recycle bins? Let's measure and say, this is making a difference.
So to the, I won't get into the should we, shouldn't we, the measuring, the filling stations count the number of fills. So we can tell you in any particular year how many bottles we've saved.
That would be excellent information to have. I go back to celebrating our successes. We need to promote that we are doing this.
I just wanted to say, I don't think I can support the motion, though, because I think now that you've mentioned the 10,000 a year, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So I think it's council's job. We put the money on the table. We made the commitment for $10,000 a year. It's not our job to micromanage and to tell staff where they should go. We're approving the funding. Let them do their job and figure out where they go. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we have projected, they're on average $2,500 each unit, approximately, right?
Yeah, we include in there as well is that our staff installs them and ties it to the
Existing.
plumbing portion of it, and that has an electrician.
So you did mention that we'd have one potentially at Harrison Park. Is that what you said?
For 2019.
And then Kiwanis Soccer Complex? And then, so would those be outdoor units or would those be indoor?
Yeah, so we're looking at each facility independently. So for example, at the soccer complex, where would be, that's a good facility to have one perhaps indoors because it has the canopy around it. So
Absolutely.
we winterize it as part of the facility park itself. And then when we look at Duncan, for example, where is the best location to have it? If we put it inside, then we would keep one in a male and a female, and then put two in one park. I don't know if that's feasible. Maybe there's another location within that building that we put it in that is accessible.
because I think from the general idea of when we had that discussion with the Water Watchers, it was about finding ways that we were going to be utilizing or reducing the plastic usage in certain areas of the city where we do have an absorbent amount of public use, where they have no options except purchasing a water bottle. So when you look at Harrison Park, currently, we have no outdoor water fill station, so it would be your only option if you have done your trail run that you've done would be to go to either inside the Harrison Park Inn to purchase a glass of water, a bottle of water, or buy it from the vending machine. So for me, I would say if we were putting $10,000 and that was able, we were doing an outdoor water one to make sure that that was utilized for the public, or at Kiwanis, or at the soccer complex, or Duncan, I'd rather see if we even had that $10,000 limit, but we had two that were outdoor, or how much, I'm sure they cost a bit more because they're outdoor units, where we're actually going to see an impact in the reduction of plastic usage because we're offering a sustainable alternative, if that makes sense. Like, I'd rather see that happen than us throw another one that goes inside the field house of Duncan McClellan that we know is going to be used by the fastball team, and besides that, the building's going to be closed and no one else is going to touch it. So if we have outdoor units where we're actually seeing public usage on it, I'd be more in favor of that.
Absolutely, and that's kind of our line of thinking of looking at each facility independently and the usage that's there. Also, we have to keep in mind maintenance and maintenance as well. So we would put it in a spot, in doing the outdoor units or the units that are accessible on the outside might be a little bit more labor intensive on our side of things, but we'd like it to be the most high use place possible. Not only for, users of the park and the facility, but, staff as well that work out in our parks and they need clean water just the same as everybody else, so.
I think the clerk has maybe found the motion of council.
The council implements a phased program to increase access to tap water at city facilities over 5 years at an estimated infrastructure cost of $9,100 per year without banning the sale of water, bottled water at city facilities.
Scott, did you, you made a motion, moved? You got it there?
It was a motion to set this $10,000 aside until we'll have a subsequent report come back through operations that would provide more direction on where we're investing these refill stations.
Okay, so I'm going to call the question that, oh, sorry, Pam. you're
I
about to-
just think it would come through community services that deals with facilities, that's all.
Locations would come through community services anyway?
If
We're just
no, we wouldn't propose to. We would propose to install them according to budget. But
If I
if
could, Your Worship, this is part of the budget.
Yeah,
We need to know whether the $10,000 is in or out before we go February the 11th. So certainly where they go can be decided later by whatever committee you want, but we need the 10 either in or out by February the 11th.
okay, so I'm going to call the question, which is to postpone the approval of this. All in favor? One opposed? Everybody else is defeated.
Council last year toured the Billy Bishop Home and Museum. It is a National Historic Site. The interior has had some damage due to a roof water leak. The roof has been repaired, and we'll be looking for a contractor who specializes in work in heritage buildings to do some of these repairs in the building. We own the building. We do have an agreement with the museum for the use of it. This is the CN Caboose. The Community Waterfront Heritage Center owns the rail car, the dining car. The city owns this car. It needs a new roof and it needs other exterior repairs. The roof is $16,000. The other exterior repairs are 10, joint 26,000. They've indicated that they'd be willing to assume the ownership of the car once the repairs are made, which will require an amendment to the agreement that would come forward through committee.
Worship, what's our overall operating expense normally just to maintain ownership of this caboose? Besides the capital expenditure that we're doing right now for $26,000, I'd rather see a partnership that we're proposing with the Community Waterfront Heritage Act, or It's great that we're going to spend $26,000 and then hand them the facility. Why wouldn't we say you can, if you want, they have a better idea of preserving and maintaining that to go along with everything else they're doing, but I'd see that more as a joint project. They have an interest in that caboose probably more than we do, to be honest. And if they can do a donation campaign or some sort of capital campaign in unison with the council, I think that would be more of a partnership as opposed to the city paying $26,000 and saying, here you go. My thoughts?
I would echo what Travis just said. I feel a bit bad discussing this in the absence of Richard, who has the flu today. A lot of this has been his baby, but I fully support Travis. It's rated low. It's $26,000. Is there a plan that you've seen, Pam, from this group in terms of what they want to do with the caboose? It's been a few years now, correct? Yeah,
They're
yeah.
actually using it right now, so they have some artifacts in there, they preserve it, so it's.
Right, but
the
I'm,
city owns
yeah.
the asset.
But I'm asking whether you've seen a game plan of any kind from them. Do you know what I mean, Kate? Like, here's what we see this place being used at for the next 5 years. Has that been produced yet, or yeah?
No, we had initial meetings with them with their intent of it, so it's been identified to us as we really haven't spent any money on the caboose in the years that I've been here anyway.
And when was the caboose delivered? I think I donated towards one of the windows like 5 years ago.
The window campaign
Oh, I'm
may have
sorry, I'm
been the
confusing
dining
things. I
car.
apologize.
Yeah,
But it's the same group wanting to use both, correct?
yeah.
And I'm uncomfortable with Travis. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm certainly uncomfortable with this kind of money without an overall game plan from the group as to what their intentions are. So I'd recommend deferring it. I don't know if that's.
So that's a
Yeah.
motion to defer?
Yes.
I like your intent. I think I'm reluctant to support it because we maybe didn't buy the caboose, but now we already have it. So I see I sympathize with staff where if we've got another organization that would like to take this off our hands, whether we should have bought it or brought it there in the first place, this might be the downsizing that is kind of the direction that we need to go. Ultimately, down the road, whatever happens, whether it's a generation from now, with the community waterfront center, the city could end up taking it back down the road anyway. But.
Don't you dare. I know the dining car is going to be starting to generate money because they're going to be renting it out. I know that because one of the groups I belong to are going to rent it in May. So they're going to be generating some money that way in the dining car. The caboose is used as a museum because people tour through there whenever the waterfront center is open and see what a caboose was like and the things that were done in it. So perhaps rather than have them partner with the repairs on this, perhaps we can sell it to them or for a nominal fee later and gain some money back that way.
The roof and the exterior are in poor condition,
They may be amenable to that type of a plan. We haven't, explored that with them, but we certainly can.
I'm going to support the motion because I don't, even if we spent the money and handed it over to them and something goes wrong with it 5 years from now, they're still going to come back and say, we have to repaint the caboose. Can you help us with it? Why are we switching ownership of this in the first place? What's the reason for saying, you spend this $26,000 and then we'll take it over? What's that mean?
If I could, Your Worship, our hope would be that we could cut the ownership to the Waterfront Museum, and we would not put another dime into that caboose in the future. I think we all agree that's probably unlikely to happen, whether they take it as is, knowing they're buying a liability that needs immediate work, or perhaps in the future, they're an organization that relies on funding and donations. But I think what we're hearing, and I think it'll be good that the Waterfront Community Foundation hears this as well, that council would like to perhaps revisit this with an opportunity to have them take ownership for something less than us bringing it to full repair. And once they have ownership, they can approach council for funding. It's up to you when they do that, whether you give it or not. As long as we have ownership, we do have to keep it in a certain state of repair. So I think we've heard you loud and clear. We will certainly call. We have a good relationship with that group and see if we can get something more amenable to council than this particular agreement. Clearly, it's not amenable to all of council.
So I'll still support the motion, and maybe we could get them to get some skin in the game with what Travis was talking about. Thanks.
Yeah.
If I can speak to it, right now it's our train car, and if it's not in good shape, then we should be doing something about it. We've got this thing called a courthouse that needs a roof repaired that we can't afford to deal with, and it will deteriorate the longer we wait. This will deteriorate, if it's in rough shape now, it will deteriorate anyway. You've got a group that has taken over a museum, pulled it out of the fire basically, that is not flush with cash. It took them more years to raise money to redo the dining car than they intended. Everybody gets fundraising fatigue, gets volunteer fatigue. It's not easy to keep going back out to the public to raise money. I get everyone's point that it'd be nice not to be in the taxpayers, but at the same point, how do you hand over something that isn't in good shape and say, go ahead, we'll renegotiate after if that's okay with you? Their answer should be no. Why would they? Seems to me we're going to have to do it at some point anyway, so if it ends up being a tiebreaker, then I won't support the motion.
I voted to defer it because it's rated as low. When I saw it rated low as priority, I assumed that the roof was not leaking to the point where additional damage is imminent, otherwise it would not be low. If imminent damage is going to happen within the next few months or year, then I recommend, I would pull my motion, but everything's premised on it being priority low. Am I incorrect on that? Yeah.
So the matrix for the priority level is just a calculation based on, again, I think we heard through how many people are affected by it, health, safety concern, asset management, strategic management. So if it rated low as per that, that's the rating, but there isn't that manager, supervisor, or staff on. As I mentioned, the roof is not leaking right now, but we like to catch those things prior to further damage occurring, because there is several artifacts inside that would
And again, I appreciate your comments. I praise this group. I donate to it. I think a lot of us have. It's a phenomenal group. I am a little surprised, when I'm hearing that there's rental planned and so forth. I just wouldn't mind seeing what they're proposing in terms of an operating budget, in terms of what they plan to bring in through the caboose. And perhaps that could assist with some of the renovations if we defer it for a year and make more of a partnership. I might be wrong about the group.
But we have no authority to ask them for their financing or their plan, right? They're an independent group. They're not a division of the city. We're not funding them each year.
I'm not suggesting demanding anything from them, okay? I think it's fair if we're being asked to invest $26,000 in a caboose. That's ours. I think it's fair to ask, what do they anticipate being able to contribute back towards that?
What I'm going to do is call the question, given that it's 2:30, we've got through, halfway through 4 sections and have got 8 to go. We got to keep moving, so I'm going to call the question. All in favor? 1, 2, 3. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Did I add that up right? Yes, I did. So it is defeated for now.
Next project is the courthouse and jail. Hedged my bets last year, hoping that we would have an agreement of purchase and sale. When that didn't happen, we did an RFP essentially for a consultant to come up, do a heritage impact study and the approach and methodology around the engineering, the structural engineering of how do we separate these two buildings? What would it look like if we demolished the jail portion? We heard from a lot of the people interested in buying the building that the jail was seen as sort of an insurmountable issue. So this RFP's out, closes maybe in a week or so. We did do an extension. We've had a lot of interest, so staff will be scoring that and that process will roll on. Rice House is an asset that the city owns. The roof has failed. It is actively leaking, and this would replace the roof on that building.
Thank you. This is another one of those buildings that I think we need to look at where we can generate some revenue from, or what's the future of this building. So again, I'm sure the roof is imminent to be done, and if we are going to do something with it to get some money back from it, then it will need to be done. But I would really like to see some future of this building.
Just quickly, is that 7,500 accurate? Like, that seems like, it doesn't seem like much for to do that. Okay. Okay, thanks.
Next project is the Tom Thompson Art Gallery washroom. The flooring and the fixtures need to be replaced. The fixtures actually aren't accessible, and they would upgrade the fixtures and the flooring and partitions. Dennis, do you want to take over now? This is the Public Works, the 2 HVAC units on the roof. I'll finish this one and then we'll keep going. So these are the 2 units at Public Works. The 2 units are on the roof. They need to be replaced in the next 2 years. We're certainly going to explore the opportunity for rebates and grants for these units.
Sorry, Pam, just before you keep going, Kristen, I'm wondering if we could get whoever priced the Rice House roof to maybe price the caboose one too, because like the caboose is $16,000.
It is a different, they are 2 different types of roofs. The caboose roof was it is an asphalt, like a larger panel, whereas the Rice House roof is just the asphalt shingles, but included in the roof was some of the exterior fascia and soffit repairs as well as included in that as well. So perhaps that wasn't, I'm not sure if it was in one of the details.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for having me. If I start sounding like Don Cherry, it's just because I'm trying to speed things up a little. So, and just give me the red light to tell me to stop. This is the bulk water management system. Essentially, right now, it'll help keep track of the water that people are using and taking. Right now, we have an honor system. So this will actually accurately track it so that we can charge the specific groups using our water. As well, it'll help us control how quickly the water shut off and or turned off, because what you find is if you turn it off too quickly or shut it down too quickly, it creates these water hammers, ends up damaging the pipes, so we have to incur all sorts of replacement costs. So this will pay for itself probably within the first couple of years easily. Sorry. How do I get this to move, Sean? All right, thank you. Thanks, Sean. This is a door replacement at Mechanics Bay. We want to be able to access it with a forklift. Right now we can. It's a man door. We want to install a roll-up door, which will ensure that we can maintain most space available. If we put regular doors in, they'd have to swing open, so we'd lose some storage space. Emergency backup dispatch. Right now we want to relocate right now the emergency backup dispatch is located at the fire hall. It's in a very small room. We want to be able to complete some renovations that were anticipated for last year, but we couldn't do them until the dispatch was actually relocated. We found space up at Public Works. So what you see here is the actual price to renovate an existing office to make it a little bit bigger. We do have a commitment from the from the police chief to provide a backup generator to be able to service this building, and we're hoping to contemplate, hopefully have this done sometime in 2019. As you can see, there's some brick replacement, or it's actually brick repair and roof work at the Public Works building again, just off the Mechanics Bays. The bricks here were damaged when we were doing snow removal. We ended up catching the bottom lip under the ledger with the front end loader when we were trying to scoop snow away from the building. It's work that should take place to ensure we can maintain the anticipated lifespan of this building. Now we're talking emergency management program.
Energy management program, sorry. So this is, this is a multi-year program, so we started it in 2017. And what we do is we itemize each of our buildings through our asset management program, and then we estimate some of our energy management efficiencies that we'd like to implement over the course of 5 years. So a lot of the retrofits that we've done, the Bay Shore has had a lot, especially with the refrigeration plant, but also a lot of our other buildings that we're doing is lighting retrofit programs where there is also rebate or incentive programs. So we're established the budget, we'll go in and do a lighting retrofit program, and then we'll receive incentive money or rebate money back. And again, just to discuss those indirect versus direct costing. The other thing we're doing with regards to celebrating our successes, I guess, is also to do our utility consumption tracking as well throughout our facilities, which is a large job in itself as well. So.
Just going from memory, were we well over budget for hydro last year? Like conservatively, like was it $250,000? Like a doozy?
In 2017, I think we were. In 2018, we're actually seeing the benefit of these programs, and we're actually dropping our operating budget on hydro in several departments, and you'll see that next week.
Okay, that's what I was hoping to, so I didn't want to get too much into it. Thanks.
Oh, is that right? Right, okay. There we go. Thank you. And before we get started, all the water and wastewater projects are coming out of their funds, except for the major, I guess the Golden Horseshoe, the water out Blue Horseshoe, which will be actually covered by debenture. I'm going to. So the first project is the Golden Horseshoe that we mentioned on several occasions. This is all water and sewer related in terms of that's needed in order to take out the bridge and the water main that crosses the bridge. This will allow us to actually provide water within the downtown core and the different sections west of the river to ensure that we maintain our water distribution system. And again, it'll help us to relieve any possibility of what happened last year when we had that major break, and then we were required to provide service, which took quite some time. What you're seeing here, what it also does is eliminate, we have a list of about 12 to 13 problem areas or problem segments of our water distribution system. By completing this project next year, we'll be able to remove 3 of those off our list.
Dennis, so you said the construction start date will be April 1st. How long do you think that's going to go on for?
For this specific project?
Yeah.
We're anticipating if we can get there in early April that we should be done within 20 weeks, 16 to 20 weeks. What you'll find is that certain work has to be done before, when you phase it, you can't say we're going to take a second and third at the same time. There's some stuff that can happen simultaneously, but they'll definitely have to provide us a schedule, and we'll have to locate a schedule to make sure that water service is being is maintained.
Did you say 16 weeks to 20 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking 4 to 5 months.
Yep.
So during that process, detour side, where are we going? Are we still going to be just pushing traffic through 10th and up
10th Street
9th?
will still be open. So what we'll do is some of those side streets will be, or avenues will actually be blocked off, but essentially we won't have both blocked off at the same time.
From a funding perspective, can you explain to me why you automatically go to debenture, which is a debt, versus considering this as a capital cost?
We wouldn't have this much available in water reserves, so debentures are really our only option.
So it couldn't be, as with other capital, considered as a taxation cost? Like, it automatically assumes that we go into debt for this.
The alternative would be to fund it from the tax levy, and we don't fund, like, we aim to recover all of our water and wastewater projects through water and wastewater rates only. And where we do not have sufficient water and wastewater rates or reserves, our only alternative is to debenture those projects or defer them to a future year.
The next project's a new project that we started a couple of years ago in terms of providing a study. What you'll find is with the cross-connection control program is that there is potential for our water system to be contaminated by some of these old industrial, commercial, and institutional buildings that didn't have backwater prevention program, backflow preventers installed when they were originally constructed, which is part of the existing building code. So the study identified about $2 million worth of work that has to be done to eliminate this risk to our water system. We brought a report back to Operations Committee identifying this program and the expenditures going forward. Right now it's a very aggressive program. What you don't see on the sheet here is that there's going to be $400,000 for the next 5 years, totaling $2 million. Hopefully how we anticipate rolling this out is actually hiring someone we're identifying as a super plumber to be able to manage the work needed on the much larger facilities and to be able to do work themselves on the smaller I guess the facilities where there's a small amount of work that has to be done. So again, it's a very aggressive program, but it's something that needs to be done, and what we're doing is be proactive. It's not legislated in place. We anticipate it will be sometime in the future, knowing that this will have an impact on every community.
Well, I guess you knew to look to your left on my sentiment on this. I understand risk management, but you know, you jump in your car or your pickup truck every day and drive down the highway, you're taking a risk. There's 665 drinking water systems in Ontario. I think about 55 have initiated a program like this. Ultimately, it's our ability to live with risk. It still would not, even if implemented, still would not fully get rid of the risk of contamination of the water line, because you could have groundborne infiltration, correct, Dennis? You know, if some contaminants from a point of main break could still get into your
Yes, anytime you have like a major break, even a major firefighting incident where we're drawing water and creating negative pressure or a suction within the system, you can draw, I guess, anyways, I don't even mention the word. You can draw bad product into this system. But this is what we're doing, like these specific facilities, we identified a potential risk source and we're trying to eliminate them. And again, when we start installing new water main throughout the community, again, new technology actually provides a much tighter seal around the joints. So.
Thanks, Dennis. The thing I heard from so many people is our water rates and our wastewater rates are crazy. We still haven't got our 17 BMA study or 18 BMA studies to compare, but We sit high to very high. It's very expensive to live here. It's a community with low discretionary income to spend. I mean, the more money we take from their wallets is less money they can invest back in your downtown or in your community. This is a program that, you know, when the government would step in and say, you have to do it, municipalities all over the province, this is a great example where they'll be screaming, then you fund it. Because we're not going to our taxpayer for it. They can't afford it. So a lot of me thinks the reason this hasn't been implemented is, regardless of party, they know they're going to take a lot of flack back through AMO in terms of funding this if they choose this route to mandate it. So, I mean, 5 years ago we did our wastewater rate study. It sets out the rates and the increases, and it considers all the operational costs, it considers the capital expenditures. I'm looking at it right here, present rate structure, Watson's did it, water forecast users, billable volumes. We went from 3 million cubic meters of water billed about 15 years ago to just over 2 million. It's a fixed cost system, and we're asking people to pay more and more and more of it, and they can't afford it. Ultimately, I think if we, either something has came out of the capital infrastructure that was used in that 5-year forecast that Watson's forecasted those rate increases. So if you're going to do this program, what came out of that 5-year study in terms of what you're not going to do now, or we're just sacking the end user even more and they can't afford it on this. I can't support it unless it's demonstrated to me that other things have came out of the 5-year capital, 10-year capital forecast that Watson's had when they built that water forecast users billable volumes. We saw it in our reserve. Pretty much the backflow prevention program here would sink it into a negative $482,000 position in the reserve. If we didn't go along with this at this time, we're close to zero. So I'm keen on hearing more discussion, but personally I'm not in favor of moving forward with this program unless it's demonstrated that other capital expenditures have been removed to offset the cost to the consumer on this.
Dennis, can you help us? Is it required of us to have this by the government at this time? Are we required as a mandate?
No, we're not required to do it at this time. But I can also say this is a very aggressive program. And this is a very aggressive program to complete it within 5 years. This is something that we've debated back and forth internally. I mean, we've anticipated maybe doing it in 10 years, which would reduce the cost to about $250,000 a year. Or less, 8 years would be $250,000 a year, 10 years would be $200,000 a year. And it's just about being proactive. You'll find a lot of times when legislation does come forward, if they see a community that's being proactive and has identified the issue and is starting to address the issue, they're a lot more lenient as when we can complete the they're a lot more lenient in allowing us a certain time frame to become compliant if the legislation does change. And as Councillor Greg brought up, I mean, the reason it hasn't come to this point yet is because the province is worried about what the cost will be to every community throughout the entire province.
And as per Councillor Grieg, I've heard a lot about our water rates. I've never paid attention to them, frankly, but I'm deeply concerned about the water rates, and so that's why I'm asking if it's mandatory, but thank you.
You mentioned to do it in 10 years. I think we should do it over 10 years instead of 5 years.
We can do that, yes. It would reduce the cost by half. So
I would move that we do that over 10 years rather than 5.
You mentioned in your explanation that there were lessons learned from the backflow episode. What cost was that to the city to fix that backflow issue? You had talked about the industrial zone backflow that occurred.
yes, I mean, in terms of every time we have one of these incidents, again, we have to issue boil water advisories, do not use water advisories. Again, we have to flush out the system, so it's the use of all this water to flush out the system, all the manpower. So you're looking at 2 or 3 days of a crew of 6 trying to deal with some of these issues. And then again, you know, I'm sure we've tracked the water that we need to flush out the system, and I can get those numbers for you. But the whole, yep.
it may help to support your request by having an offset consideration on an episode that's already happened.
If I could, Your Worship, we were fortunate when we had that backflow that there was no contamination. Our samples went away, they came back clean. The real cost, certainly to the community, was we had people in town, a significant portion, who couldn't run their businesses for 36 hours, Dennis?
In some cases, yes.
And we had no contamination. Had we had contamination, and it's just an if, then certainly we'd have seen our costs and our community's reputation damaged to a point that we couldn't overcome it. But it's an insurance. As we talked about this internally, that's a very big number to our budget. We've never had this problem. We've never had contamination through a backflow that I know of. But last January, it was an uncomfortable 24 hours till we got that sample back. So it's the risk of, if you have backflow and you do have contamination, we'll have real solid cost to reputation as well as everything. But it's a big number. We know that.
Thank you, Worship. I know water rates and wastewater rates are held separately from our regular budgets. And I hate to put you on the spot this knowing because you're just beginning your presentation. We're only 2 slides in. There are 2 significant portions that are being distributed to water. You continue down and we do see you have other, fairly large water capital expenses. If we went ahead with everything on here, what would be the anticipated water rate increase? I guess that'd be through Kate. Sorry, Dennis.
Through your worship, our water rates are actually more than sufficient to cover our water annual capital program, other than that Golden Horseshoe, which is a significant expenditure. The debenture is required there. Where we're seeing pressure is on our wastewater rates. We do not have enough money to operate at a surplus, to set money aside. We're actually operating at a deficit on wastewater, going further into the deficit every year. So it is actually our wastewater rates where we need to see increases. We did not increase our water rates last year. We only increased the wastewater surcharge. And the direction that we're going right now, I'm going to recommend the same thing for 2019, that we leave water rates stable and put that entire increase to wastewater again.
And just for clarification, we can't mix the two. We can't mix water and wastewater, can we?
The money.
Yeah. Drink your bottled water. So those are 2 separate budgets. You can't intertwine the 2 separate, the water and the wastewater budgets, correct?
We cannot use water rates to fund wastewater.
Okay. So with everything even in here, with Dennis's proposal, 400,000, which you say is aggressive, even we have a motion on the floor for 200, we still wouldn't see a water rate increase.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. This next project is an actual project that was supposed to be completed in 2018. However, we did have a bit of an issue of identifying a consulting engineer to help us with the design of this project. And when we actually did, and they completed the design, and then when we ended up ordering all the parts, there's about a 16-week delay in terms of receiving the components in the chamber itself. So it's finally arrived, and it's planned to be installed early in the new year. Over the past year, we actually had issues with the genset up at the East Hill booster station. We had the individuals from the TSA come in and say we can no longer actually fuel up our backup generator because the fuel tank was leaking. And then when we started looking into it and total replacement and the shroud around it was actually leaking as well, we found the prices were almost close to $100,000 just to repair the old one. We ended up pricing out a new one. It's $140,000, but now we have a brand new genset that'll last for 30 years. Again, the old one was somewhere in the 20-some-odd year range, so it would have to be replaced eventually. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to see whether it's worthwhile selling or keeping it for ourselves and maybe repurposing it. We'll see what the prices come back with. If it's very low, we might end up retaining it and then using it somewhere else, maybe at one of our. Possibly, we have to see if that size can actually work, but we'll see what we can get back from when we try and auction it off or sell it off. This is a big one too, is fiber from the East Street Hill Booster Station and again City Hall. We have a SCADA system that's connected to the booster station. We do have some connectivity, but we're having real issues with it. So what happens when the connectivity does go down, we have to have one of our operators, one of 3 operators from the water treatment plant go up there and operate the facility. This fiber will actually be able to be used for other purposes, including linking all the street lights or traffic lights along 8th Street, which is something we anticipate doing as part of the other projects that you see as we come along. Yes. And the thing is, what you'll find in a community like ourselves, a lot, sometimes you can actually provide the connectivity with these systems through wireless, but given our topography and the trees that we have in our city, it becomes very problematic when you talk about wireless because you have to have that line of sight, which becomes a real issue, especially for 9 months of the year. Valves, again, this is something that we have to do. There's a little correction on the sheet. There's future years expenses of about $45,000 on an annual basis in the future. So again, these valves need to be replaced on a systematic or on a schedule basis. So again, it's just something that we have to do with our existing water treatment plant. Piping, again, was a project that was started in 2017. We hope to have some of the work completed, a good portion of the work completed last year, in 2018. It's a carry forward project. We're starting to use stainless steel piping, which right now there's no lifespan on it. It could be good to go for just about ever. The instrumentation replacement at the water treatment plant, again, these are pH probes, turbidity probes. These, again, are items that have to be replaced as they wear out. So again, this is something that will be done for the next 2 years, or at least for next year, so it'll be another $25,000 next year. This project is I call it a pretty cool project. Our water treatment plant now is at about 50% capacity unless we run into issues of heavy rainfall or the spring freshet when we see all that chocolate milk entering the bay. And then what it does is requires us to use a lot of our water that we have in our that we've treated already to help with the backwash process. So we end up wasting a lot of water just trying to clean our filters. So what this project will do, and what you see is $25,000 for this year to do the engineering. It'll be $400,000 for next year. It'll actually allow us to maintain the capacity that we have in the water treatment plant. Because what you'll find is even though we're at about 50% capacity, we end up being at about 90–95% capacity during those heavy rainfalls. So this project is actually it gives you a lot of confidence in our staff because they're just not going through the motions. They're actually have a problem and come up with a unique solution to deal with that problem as opposed to expanding the plant. So this project will be a key in ensuring that we can build out our community in terms of development and ensuring we don't have to do any upgrades to the water treatment plant in terms of increasing the capacity. Again, this is something that just needs to replace. The old computers at operator SCADA system have come to the end of their useful life, and they need to be replaced. This is another project that was supposed to be completed this year. We're going to do it next year. The traveling water screen is 60 some odd years old. It doesn't owe us anything, and eventually needs to be replaced. And I have dibs on that little red tag you see on there because that'll be something unique to have for your office. Installation of a security gate at the water treatment plant. This past year we had an issue of someone who pretended to be someone who they weren't, and gain access to the water treatment plant, and then we had a hard time trying to get that individual out because they were focusing on fluoridation in our water system, and our guys were pretty cool about how they finally were able to get the person out of the building. So what we want to do now is have the gate up and have an intercom system, so when people want to come and visit it that aren't scheduled to come in, at least we can somehow keep them from coming to the front door. We have a gate there now, but it's a manual gate, so like when you and I go in and first thing in the morning, we just open the gate and leave it open. And this one now will be electronically controlled from inside. Similar, because we have one like the wastewater treatment plant that we can control that way. Me too. Well, the system, the gate's already there, it's just actually the mechanism in place to, and the control system. Yeah.
Do you really think it's necessary? Like, that happened once, and we're talking $35,000.
Yes.
You know,
In terms of, it's all security related to, we're very lucky to be located where we are. You know, we're not right on the beaten path. But as time goes on, you'll find we have to beef up the security around our water system. I mean, it's a system, you know, I don't want to mention terrorist attacks or people having, you know, those thoughts of how to really have a negative impact on our population. But if they were going to do it, I mean, anyone will have a brain to heaven knows the water system. So just being able to have a bit more security involved, I think, would really help.
But there's a whole lot of more obvious or less obvious places that they could put stuff in the water. Is that
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So is a $35,000 automatic gate going to prevent that? I don't think so.
No.
Well, yeah, initially I had taken a quick look at this, and the picture was wastewater treatment plant, so I had that in my head. There's no other alternatives to, like, just using door cards or something that we're already using? Do we have anything like that that makes a viable alternative at a much more affordable price? Or I guess, what if the person's not, they're waiting at the gate and they're waiting for somebody that's supposed to be on the inside intercom and they're not there, and I'm just wondering about unforeseen challenges.
Yeah, I think our biggest thing is we try and schedule people to be there. Like when we go ourselves, like say Matt and myself, we phone ahead to let them know we're coming. So in this case, someone actually showed up at the front door and said, "Oh, I'm here to do the water audit." And we know we have to do the water audit every year. They opened the door and then they went on their rant, and we went, "Oh, it's too late, they're inside the building." So at least if we had somewhere where we could stop them from, because I don't think we have the intercom system right at the door. It's like looking out the window and say, "Oh, hi," and you open the door and you say something like that. But if we had this system in place, they go to intercom, they're saying, "Oh, I'm here to do a water audit." I say, "Well, let me check this." They'd phone Matt or myself and say, "No, we have no one scheduled. No one's supposed to be here. There's no inspectors coming." And at least they haven't even got onto the property.
So how much traffic in and out of there every day? So you have one guy?
It's usually just our guys that are going in and out, and whether or not we have a delivery for some of the substances, chemicals that we need to operate the plant.
I'm just thinking of our local farmers, you know, they get out of the truck and they open that gate, they drive through, they get out of their truck and they close the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was a little confused. As I look at the picture, I realize that's wastewater. You're talking about water.
Correct. We're just using the example of the wastewater treatment plant. Is similar. That gate already exists. That has the potential to be locked and open up from the inside, and using the intercom system and the fob system. And we want to install the same sort of gate at the water treatment plant.
I go to a gym down past there. I try to get there. I go at least twice a week. I try and get there as many times as Travis does. Oh, never mind. I've rarely seen the gate on the wastewater treatment closed.
That's during the day. It's not as critical as a water treatment plant.
No, I'd agree. Nobody's going to poison the wastewater and try and harm anybody. But there's that's the type of gate. Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't know. I'll have to see if anyone's getting motions or nothing. Thanks.
Not a motion, just clarification. From a risk management perspective and from insurance liability? Is there any advantage to us to invest this money?
Something I can't answer right now, but something I can definitely look into.
That would be helpful because should something occur, what is our liability if we don't at least be able to say we did everything in our power to secure access to the drinking water system? Sometimes, and I agree, one of, but sometimes that one of is a marker to a high-risk situation.
I was going to move to remove it from the 2019 capital budget.
Pardon me, no, you're doing yet, clarifier 1 and 2 chain, drive chain assemblies and gearboxes. Those are units that actually help, well, actually what they do is they control, there's another chain with some flights on it that actually, when the system works, this thing actually drives another chain that collects all the sludge that builds up at the bottom of the clarifier and puts in a sludge control system. So it's just, again, they wear out this very harsh environment. You can see these are the older clarifiers at the wastewater treatment plant, and again, they just have to be replaced. Again, is the return rails. This little rail you can see on the top of the picture there. Again, you see that's the flights on the end of the chain, so they come up like that, and they rotate down. They scrape the bottom. Again, another piece of the clarifier that has to be replaced. This is the orthophosphate probe and online monitoring. This is something that came up this year. We noticed the wastewater treatment plant actually uses biological matter to help treat the sewage. We found that we were having a bit of issues with the efficiency of we're going to call them the bugs. It's much easier to refer to them as bugs because that's what they are. We found that they weren't as efficiently treating the sewage. And so we were, brainstorming and troubleshooting to see what was happening, what negative impacts, if there's another sort of media coming into the system and having an impact on them. So what we did is we said, well, these systems are fairly new, so there's going to have to work out the bugs of the bugs. So what we found dealing with the issue, we've narrowed it down to the phosphate control of the effluent that we were dealing with. And then when we did a little further research, we contacted some of the other wastewater treatment plants, specifically the one in Cornwall, and they said the big thing is phosphate. If you need a certain amount of phosphate, make sure the bugs will operate or being able to deal with the sewage most efficiently. And again, you have to be able to control the amount of phosphate you're introducing into the environment once as part of the effluent that's discharging into the lake. So these monitors is something that they've incorporated into their facility, which is very similar to ours, and they've had a major impact on the efficiency of the system. Again, these are placed gas detection monitors. One is, they do two things really. You're looking at hydrogen sulfide in terms of explosive gases and making sure there's enough oxygen within the system in certain areas so the guys can conduct their business. Something else that we need to replace on a periodic basis. Dechlorination, again, this is something that we have to do in terms of discharging water into the environment, whether it's wastewater. In this case, we're specifically talking about wastewater. It helps us monitor, make sure we're able to reduce the chlorine levels so we can actually discharge into the receiving environment, in this case, Georgian Bay. Again, over this past year, we found that we installed a control system, and when we had our contractor come in to review the system, we realized it was running really hot in terms of overheating, and the reason being that the environment is so hot, and what happens with these PLCs, these programmable logic controllers, is that if they overheat, they'll tend to break down, and again, that means the system would be inoperable. So this is to install a climate control system to ensure that these program PLCs operate as intended. This is an annual program. It should be $25,000 across this board. And this deals with, we have a combined sewer system, not as extensive as it used to be. We're helping reduce it. This will allow us to help reduce the amount of stormwater entering our sanitary sewer. And again, it just has that amount of money to help us deal with certain roof leaders, sump pumps, and help divert the water away from the sanitary sewer and keep it in the storm system. Again, there is cost associated with treating stormwater. Why do it if you don't have to? This was another staff report that came to the Operations Committee. We were looking at doing some work at the West Side Pump Station, and we found that when we were looking at it, there were some upgrades that needed to be completed. We were worried about the structural integrity of the building. So before we proceed with any sort of plan, we want to do monitoring this year to see if the sewage pumping station is actually settling in the area around it. So before we even that's why you'll notice there's no additional pricing for future years, because we don't know what options coming forward in terms of whether replacing the building in entirety or doing some significant structural work. So all we want to do for this year is monitor to see what's actually happening at that location.
How old is this building?
This building that's a good question. I think it's in the staff report, but I believe this is the original building, so I don't want to say it's 40 to 50 years old, but I'll find out the actual number, Mary. This program is a great program. This is where we line our existing sewers.
Sorry, Dennis, can you just back up? Can you just, $5,000 to monitor that?
Yeah.
What does that involve?
It's just really surveying it. It's putting a couple of points on the building to see if they.
So we're just doing that ourselves?
No, we're going to hire somebody. We're going to probably hire the same consultant I looked at originally.
Do we have anybody that can do that? I mean, really, all we're doing is we're measuring expansion joints, and we're checking to see if
Well, there's cracks in the building. We want to put markings on the building to see if it's actually settling.
Right.
So we want to make sure we don't have that survey equipment to do it ourselves. That's accurate enough to see if it is happening.
Okay.
Because we're coming down. It's not like just pulling up a GPS or something like that and saying, here I am. And we have to look at it and see whether it's shifting or going up and down. And we could talk about millimeters can be the difference to determine whether or not it's settling or not.
Okay.
So if we're out by that much, we know it's settled that much, we may not be able to pick up with equipment that we kind of have right now. Again, this is lining of our sewers. This is a program that we've had. It should read $300,000 in future years. So we've reduced it just because of the impact some of the other projects are having on our wastewater fund. We want to keep this program going. It's really extremely cost effective as opposed to replacing and tearing up roads to replace the water and sewer, or sorry, in this case, the sanitary sewer pipes. So what we do is we keep the same pipe and ground. They go in, they put a great big sock in there, and then they steam it up, and all the epoxy in the sock actually hardens. So we get start extending the life of those sewer lines by 20 to 30 years at a fraction of the cost. This is another, this is, right now what you should be doing on an annual basis is flushing all your sewer lines. We don't have the resources to do that. So this device will help us identify the sewer lines that actually need to be flushed, the ones that really have a lot of debris built up. So what it does is make our program more effective and efficient, because we'll just deal with the stuff that's really needs to be done.
We have a camera for that too, right? Do we send the cameras in?
The cameras it's much more, if you're sending the cameras in, you might as well be flushing. Because what you'd have to do to send a string, you have to pass a string, you have to actually send the flushing device has a little jet on it, so you tie a rope to it, you send that down the line, so why don't you flush the line, and you bring up the string on the other side, then you pull the camera through it.
Well, my answer would be because we already have the cameras.
Oh, I'm saying, but we wouldn't do that, we just flush instead. We just don't have enough time to do every segment pipe. Right. To actually camera it all and then identify it. This device, it put on the manhole, it does its magic, and
well, it should be magic. It's $40,000.
yeah, but it's a one-time event or one-time purchase,
right?
And then we can do it every year. That way, we can deal with use our resources where they need to be used.
Okay.
So with that purchase, you're telling me we don't have the manpower currently to flush every system, or we're going to have the manpower to go to every manhole and put this new device in it?
Yeah, it just sits on there, and you push a button. So early in the season, one person will go out and start doing that and identify the problematic areas, and then the flushing crew will come out and do what they can and identify and deal. It'll be all done on a priority basis. We can only do so much this year, so we're going to deal with all the problem areas first and work our way down and get as much done as possible.
But isn't that
make
what
sure.
flushing schedule would probably be currently?
Well, the thing is, you should be flushing every main every year.
But will we be flushing and using this tool?
We'd be using this to identify the areas that we should absolutely be flushing.
Flush first, so
Yes.
we'll still do a flushing aspect afterwards, and it's still going to be on a scheduled basis, just the same way you're just going to use this protocol first and then do flushing later on.
Yeah.
Identify your high-risk points.
Exactly.
And then at that point, would you just, like, is this good for us to purchase, or is there something that we can do a contractor to do it for a less amount of money? Because probably you're going to know where your high sediment areas are on a rotational pattern first, wouldn't you?
We would hope so, but I mean, I could change from year to year depending on how, you can't predict every year it's going to be the same area. It probably will be, but you can't predict that it will be. Or you can't ensure that it will be. So what this will do is actually say identify those problem areas, and maybe in the future we know those are the mandatory ones we have to do, but like you said, there's still some areas that we're going to have to make sure we flush, even if it's 2 or 3 years, we still have to get to those pipes. But this will make sure that we identify the hot spots first.
Is there an opportunity that we can partner with other municipalities who may or may not have this piece of equipment for shared cost?
We could. I mean, we have to find another community that actually has it can't be a rural community that has septic systems. It'll have to be another one that has a collection system for sewage.
Or if we agree to purchase them, we can have them offset costs?
We can actually rent it out to people. I mean, I've seen those agreements in other places where you have a specific tool. I mean, we do ours first, and then we can say after, say, if we do it in April, May, then you'll have to come in. You can use it some other time of the year. And
That might
that sort of
help.
thing. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I just want to see what the rest of council thinks. With the way we are with our budget right now at 3.41, this is $40,000. This is just another thing to me that we don't need to be spending this year. If we need it, maybe look at it next year, but I would move that we remove that.
Okay, I'd just like to clarify that this is on the wastewater portion, so this wouldn't ultimately affect the 3.41% on the tax rate. This would go towards the wastewater portion. So with those objectives of what are these projects that are out there currently for wastewater, Kate, what would that increase be if we approved all those?
I haven't done a full analysis, but I would say that at this point, I would recommend an increase of to wastewater rates similar to last year, which was 6.5%.
There goes all the oxygen in the room. I'm seeing a lot of new assets and a lot of enhancements and a 6 point what?
For
percent
wastewater?
increase?
So the wastewater increase last year was 6.5%. The increase to the overall water bill that someone would receive, because it's a combined water wastewater bill, was around 3%. But there was a 0% increase to water, and the full 6.5% went to wastewater.
Yeah, my brain's spinning.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess I'm not going to cut you off, Dennis, because I know you've still got multiple things here to present. As a council recommendation or a council mindset, Ms. Allen, would be, does council during this capital budget session have the authority to help reduce that increase by a drastic amount? I know I'm putting you on the spot, or are we kind of getting kicked whether we approve these or not, and we're going to take that increase?
On the wastewater side, we are, I would say, to use your words, getting kicked a bit. These projects aren't overly significant. There's about $500,000 here of new capital. Where we're seeing the pressure on the wastewater side is on the significant debentures that we're taking on. So the 3rd Avenue East reconstruction project, that's a significant debenture on the wastewater side. Wastewater treatment plant was a significant debenture. So it's more once we get into the engineering budgets, and not even necessarily this year, but in future years where we see large reconstruction projects that are focused on wastewater, that's where the pressure is coming from.
And there is no development charges money in this area?
Development charge money can only be used for growth, projects required for growth reasons. I don't believe these projects are required in order to facilitate or accommodate growth. These are to serve our existing system.
Does this contribute to improving a reduction in bypassing at all? Does that come into play or any consideration on this? Where, I mean, the better the state of the sewers, the less bypassing that could occur, or it's not really?
Not this specific project, Councillor Gregg. This is more related to being the most efficient and effective we can be with the existing workforce that we have.
Just before we move forward, sorry that you're at the stand at the moment. Kate,
That's fine.
Something that's kind of chewing on me, has been chewing on me all day long. You start off, wish Wayne was here. You know, he started off with, and again I quote, future won't be able to afford some of these assets that we're into. Our asset management plan that you showed us that thing, and I asked you questions sort of at the end of the morning break, is just core infrastructure. So that does include everything, so we can expect that gap between what we're raising now and what our asset management plan is going to require is going to widen. That asset management plan looks at what we have now and the cost of maintaining it and replacing it. But yet, when you showed us all the graph right from the start, it's 45% enhancement. So that's beyond our asset management plan, where we've tried to increase that 1% to close that gap. We're enhancing. So we're actually adding. We've actually got 45% of our capital budget is going in a different direction than just closing that gap and trying to get caught up. Have I got that right?
Yeah, so there's other things that we look at. There's projects that are done for strategic reasons, but yes, you're right. Some of the projects, and quite a few in this budget, based on the classification that staff have provided for each one, I would say it's closer to 40% of our budget is for sort of new assets and improvements to existing assets that are over and above their current service level.
Wayne's back in. Maybe I'll ask him. I'll repeat the question. Just, you know, we've got that, we started off with that graph where we've got AMP, but yet the asset management plan looks at replacement and maintenance of what we've got. It's not talking about new stuff, and the gap is already widening. Once we start adding the things that we haven't put into that study, it's going to widen faster or greater to a greater degree. It's going to accelerate. But yet, we've got a graph here that this capital budget today presents enhancements of 45%. That doesn't close the gap. That's enhancements. That's adding to it. That doesn't get us closer to closing the gap. 45%, or as Kate says, probably closer to 40, of what's being presented to us today are enhancements. To me, it doesn't make sense. I'm having trouble understanding why.
And certainly I'd like to look at that enhancement list to see exactly what we're defining as an enhancement, and not challenging Kate on that in any way. I go back, Your Worship, to what I said at the opening of this meeting, and I've said to our staff for several years now. And I say to the public, I think they need to understand this. From my chair, only my chair, but it isn't only known sound, I think it's virtually in North America. We have come through the best of times for a long time, but let's say 50 years. We've come through the best of times. We've been the wealthiest continent in the world. And we have serviced ourselves thinking that would never end. I believe we can't look into the future with that same bright light. I still think it's going to be a great light. It's a wonderful place to live. It's the best place to live. But we do need to start to looking, saying, perhaps our children, our grandchildren will not be able to live with all of the services that we have. And councils in the future, this one and for generations after, will have to make some very difficult decisions on replacing fixed assets. And Councillor Merton has touched on it a bit today. Are we using those assets? And I tell you, we go through some of our studies, and anecdotally you drive by, and I do this all the time, and I look at some of our assets, and I drive by and I go, no one's there. And I've said again, the same I've said it to council. No one's there. I drive by again, no one's there. You bring it forward and you do a survey and you find out, oh my goodness, it's used continually. And you're going, well, my eyes don't tell me that. So they will be very tough decisions to make. But I wish I had a better answer for you. It's a long-winded way to go, but we will have to start looking at that.
I agree fully with what you're saying, that we can't continue to afford what we're doing, but yet, on our capital budget today, the majority, the biggest chunk, is enhancement. It's not replacement, it's not maintenance, it's not continuing to provide what we're doing and replacing those aging assets that we know that we've got. It's enhancements. And it's just striking me that I'm not sure that we're going in the right direction if we're enhancing and at the same time talking about we can't continue to afford the services that we're providing.
Also, some of those enhancements, I believe, and we've said this for a while, and we need to, again, put those words into action for council, but for the public. Some of these enhancements are intended to get more out of our staff, so we can do more things, but also we need to start looking at if we pick up assets that should do the work of 6 men, 6 individuals, we have to start thinking if we need then 6 individuals down the line. So where we have enhancements that allow us to perhaps reduce the labor input, we need to look at that in the future. So, but I would like to revisit with Kate what she's defining as an enhancement in the capital asset. We may have a slight disagreement about that, I don't know.
But each sheet is listed as being an enhancement or new asset or...
It is shown in the detail sheets that you have, yeah.
Just, okay, that's my whine. Brian's got a motion. Go ahead, Scott.
Quickly, does this give us an ability, if we're using the Vactor more efficiently right now, we've got a Vactor on a 10-year replacement program. Is this something that we can now, help move the Vactor to an 11-year replacement program? I mean, there we're going to then see some offset with the operational savings.
This specific project? No. I mean, we're still going to use the Vactor the same amount of time. It's just, this is going to identify where we need to use it. Okay, the next project is actually some upgrades to the existing backup genset at the wastewater pumping station, or west side pumping station. Again, it doesn't currently meet the TSSA standards when we talk about the fuel overfill, accommodations, vents, and an alarm system in case the fuel system does overflow.
Is it breaking down regularly?
It's not breaking down. It's just the fuel system that has changed over time. And what you happen, the inspectors come and say, hey, listen, whether it's the double containment system or whether it's something to do with the overfill, that has to be in place. What they do is if it's not, they'll say you can no longer service, or you can no longer fill up the tank that services the genset. So it's either putting a brand new one in for at least $140,000 or making these upgrades. Please ignore this next sheet. It's going to be covered at another sheet. It's a duplication. Here's a project that we want to undertake to create a quality management system similar to what we have for our water system, for our sanitary sewer system. I think I showed you this during our council orientation. Essentially, this binder that we have a whole process of what we have to do for the water system. We want to duplicate it and actually do it for the sanitary sewer system. It is not mandatory. However, it will make sure that we're very efficient with how we conduct business, wastewater treatment, and as well as with our collection system. This one is a leachate disposal. This was on the, sorry?
No problem. This is one I had asterisked. I just know the pressure our wastewater plant is under, and I think our staff are able to, they do a great job. And I just thought this one was a questionable medium, and when there's so much pressure on our wastewater rates, I had an asterisk on it, so I would be in favor of not moving forward on it personally. I can make it that. I'm used to.
Is it something that staff can do?
If we try to do it, it would probably take us forever to be able to find the time to do it. What we'll find is get a consultant to ask the questions, put the program in place. You know, like we'll have input on it, but at least we'll have someone that brings it all together. And if we try and do it ourselves, we might never be able to get it all together. It would always be at that 50 or 60% completion rate.
Is the motion delay it or remove it? Like to put it back in next year and look at it?
It can always come forward to budget next year from staff, but the motion is to remove it for 2019.
I have a general question, perhaps Mr. Ritchie can answer it. Do we have a template that tells us when we use consultants or not? Is there a bright line test? Is there a memo? Does any document like that exist, or is it purely on an ad hoc basis? If you could speak to that.
I would say, Councillor, we have the same discussion leading into our budget presentation to you, where I challenge all of our staff. Do we have the in-house resources? Number one, do we have the hours? Do we have the talent to do that? In some cases, we do have both, and we'll go ahead. There's many reports that come to council that our staff have crafted. You'll see many of them throughout the year. There are other instances where we just don't feel we have either the resources from a talent perspective on specifics or the hours. But is there a test? It is a matter of each of us gauging, quite frankly, how many reports and studies we can do before we reach the breaking point. And if council doesn't wish this to be done from a consultant's perspective, I would recommend then we defer it for another year.
Well, it just strikes me, and I'm not trying to be glib at all, Dennis, but it strikes me you could have 20 consultants' reports on any aspect of operations any given year. I'm not sure I see the urgency. I support the motion in this case. Yeah.
Hey, folks, don't feel bad if you cut something, right? No, I'm just saying, like that's exactly your job. We present you with something, you consider it, and then you make your informed decision. So it's not, no one's going to be offended by you doing this. Well, right on. I'm done. See, there's a method to my madness. This is a leachate disposal location. So like when we collect leachate from the old Genoa landfill site. Our main concern when we first brought this project forward is whether or not our sewage treatment plant, our wastewater treatment plant, could actually treat the leachate. And what we had to do is you try and say, you know, leachate comes at a certain concentration. So we said, well, what can a wastewater treatment plant handle? So sometimes you say, well, you know, it can handle a certain concentration. So you would locate this at a certain point where you would actually, the leachate would actually dilute itself while mixing with regular waste. So what we found is the sewage treatment plant can handle that leachate no problem. This is a project that we could actually locate the dump station, or we can remove it altogether. It wouldn't matter because the wastewater treatment plant is dealing with the leachate. And this project was slated for last year, was just to carry forward just in case we didn't get good results back from our leachate treatment, so.
I'm not sure I'm quite familiar with this myself, because right now we've had the truck, I guess, unloading just north of Miller Waste Yard there on 23rd Street. So, I mean, maybe just for the benefit of the new councillors, what the heck is going on with the trial period? I'm not sure if you're familiar with what's going on, but just a week ago, for instance, it's probably a 36-foot, well, just like the truck there, and it's backed up and it's dumping into our system, I guess, at that spot. But I don't know I mean, I had no problem moving forward with this in the budget. I didn't know how familiar you were with what we're talking about.
If I can comment, I mean, like, all I did was build a permanent dump station for the leachate, like for the trucks that are for the haulers. And the whole idea was to maybe locate it at the best possible, I guess, location so that we can ensure that there was proper mixing of the leachate. And we found that it doesn't really matter.
So I'm confused. You're telling me that we really don't need this, but then you're saying we do.
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm just saying right now, what's the practice? We've got, for the last year, maybe not even quite a year, the trucks have been just, that's where they've been offloading, is next to Miller Waste there on 23rd Street.
And there's no problem with that continuing?
That is correct. Or even
So-
dumping right outside the sewage.
So
wastewater
I'll make a
treatment
motion that this be removed.
plant. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Sanitary sewer modeling was a project slated for last year. We had we initiated a project, but we had staff turnover, so we weren't able to complete it. So this is the carry forward project. We did retain a consultant, so the project's well on its way to being, well, it's not completed yet, but it's well into its way of being completed type thing. This is the improved sewage bypass monitoring. As you know, that we have, there are several locations within town where we have bypass during major rain events. So we have to be able to monitor and report on the amount of sewage that's making its way out of our system and into the receiving environment. What we started last year was a better process to be able to collect the data. And last year was the first phase, and this year is phase 2. Oh, I guess I'm done there. Not well, just done with that section.
So if you click on the next one along the bottom there, isn't it? No, yes, it is.
Engineering and traffic. Did I miss a section?
Cut in there. So no, contract services follows this one.
Okay.
I do think if we can get through this today, that would be great. If we could get through contract services as well, that would be nice. But certainly, if we can get through this section, this will be the bulk of our capital budget, and we can defer those last few small sections to our next meeting next week, because we are getting close. We're about 45 minutes from the end of the day here.
Don Cherry's about to make an appearance, folks. Asphalt resurfacing. Again, this is something that has to occur on an annual basis. This is what's the most palatable amount. This year we have slated $572,000. There's a list of the roads we propose to do. Some of this will also include some of the work leading up to the bridge, especially areas on 9th Street that you see have really deteriorated to the point where they need to be resurfaced. You know, in front of the Roxy, leading up to the 8th Street Bridge, we plan on doing those areas. This is all linked together. I mean, we wish we could spend more, but I mean, we have some targets, and we could spend $10 million this year, and you know, and still need to spend more. So, but this is the amount that we have slated for this year.
Didn't us voting down the Harrison Park resurfacing, could that help with this as well?
I don't
added money.
think so. Get it? I guess it's gas tax for Harrison Park too? Yeah, okay, yeah, this is gas tax, yeah.
Well, just to follow on that, can we add that 100,000 back into this resurfacing and find somewhere else to use that 100,000?
Absolutely.
This is currently funded through gas tax, so.
And
you-
isn't that funded through gas tax, the road at Harrison Park?
Yes, but if you allocated that 100,000 to this project, there's not like tax funding that it frees up. This project is currently funded through gas tax.
Yeah.
So you could increase the total budget amount,
Right.
but you're not going to free up funds.
No, that's what I mean.
Oh, okay, sorry, yes.
But it speeds up resurfacing, correct?
Correct.
Right. I guess I would move that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, concrete replacement, again, here's, a lot of this is tied into the asphalt resurfacing program, again, dealing with the concrete issues, concrete sidewalks, curb and gutter, such, and other specific areas that we find where we have to do some refurbishment to existing concrete. And again, it's the amount that we have slated is what we have as targeted and is somewhat palatable. You know, we can spend tons of money here every year and still take a while to catch up. And then here's a really small project that we plan on doing next year. So, anyways, plan on spending $2 million this coming year, $5 million, and then a little bit in the following year. So we're well into our way to detailed design. We're hoping that the tender comes out for this project. This will be the third project and major project in line in terms of tenders coming out. So we anticipate October starting, 14 months, and the bridge should be out for one Christmas. The other one is the 1.7 for the Water Horseshoe, the Golden Horseshoe, and the third one that'll be coming up fairly shortly is the River Precinct. We want to get it done by August because we have to pave, and we also have to put a little something I'll mention in the next slide. We have to make sure we get the pavement markings down because those roads will be part of the detour. So we're identifying like 2 lanes in one direction and 1 lane in the opposite direction, so that'll have to change. This is the downtown and 10th Street corridor traffic control signal control system pre- and post-bridge replacement. As I promised everyone that we're going to eliminate traffic on 10th Street. So, anyways, I'm not going to do that, but what we're trying to do, and I've got staff that are really gung-ho about this, is how can we improve traffic control on 10th Street, 8th Street, and 9th Street. So we've already had consultants and suppliers come in to show us what's out there, real-time data where we can get as much traffic flowing up and down these roads. It does require with additional equipment needed for this, some consulting in terms of the timings associated with I'm talking about for the next 3 years and 4 years. But main thing for next year is actually dealing with what improvements we can make and also tie in to what we're doing. Like what we want to do is not duplicate effort. We want to do some work that we can extend beyond the replacement of the bridge, but part of next year's work in this project also will deal with the detour of the bridge to make sure we can get traffic to flow as best as possible through the detour routes. And what we're going to do is during operations, we're going to bring back one of the consultants up there, just as the suppliers, just to show you what this system can do. And it's pretty cool. This is the 8th Street Bridge deck waterproofing. This was a project I was supposed to start, I think originally anticipated for 2017, and it's just one of those ones that we kept putting off, but we want to get this done this year as part of leading up to the 10th Street Bridge being taken out. So there's going to be a lot of work along 8th Street. And this is all going to be linked together. It's going to be all hands on deck, including myself, when we turn to talk about managing these projects. And we're going in there with the I guess the game plan is trying to help reduce the cost where we can, to try and achieve little savings here and there, because those will all add up. So a project like this, we want to make sure it's done. We want to make sure we get the full life expectancy out of the 8th Street Bridge, because you know how hard it is to replace a bridge.
Thank you, Dennis. I'll be honest, I'm kind of concerned when we start getting into this year, when we start talking about doing an upgrade trunk main for 4 to 5 months from April to August or September. We start taking it at the 10th Street Bridge in October. We do this from July till September, and then the next one underneath that is the Downtown River Precinct that starts in July and done in or starts in May and done in August. That's a lot of activity going on at one time, with a lot of hopes and fingers crossed that every project gets done on time to help the next one go through. Otherwise, we don't have those detours that we're talking about utilizing when the 10th Street Bridge comes down, which is ultimately our #1 goal.
Absolutely.
And we have 8th Street go down for pavement. We have 2nd and 3rd Avenue west that could potentially be done with the upgrade of the trunk water mains. Then we have 1st Avenue East from 9th to 8th during the Downtown River Precinct. And then we're still trying to tell 30,000 traffic users to go through our downtown core and still revitalize our downtown.
Yes, I share your concerns.
So I'll be
But a project like this, that's why we're trying to, you have to be very efficient in how you time these projects. Like for here, you have to mill this bridge first to remove the asphalt in order to put apply the waterproofing on top of the deck of the bridge. So, but we also have to be able to mill the area, the road section of road that we plan on doing in front of the farmers market in City Hall. So what we do is, like, you bring the miller in, he mill everything down to where he needs to. You bring these guys in, the next contractor in to put the waterproofing on the decking, and then the paving would come right after that. So yes, I share. That's why I'm saying when it's all hands on board, it'll be myself too that'll be help managing these projects. So we'll have everyone in engineering. We'll have our consultants, like especially when we'll hire a consultant to help with River Precinct, with the bridge, and with the Golden Horseshoe. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like when I say all hands on deck, I mean we're going to be out there. You're not going to see us. If you want to see us, you're going to have to come out on site, because that's where we're going to be.
And I appreciate that sentiment, that knowing that you, because I would expect that's how you, knowing you as a outside of council as well, that's your kind of personality, that you would be hands on deck in doing that. And I'm really appreciative of that. I just think the timing, when we start getting all three of these big major projects, now that would be my quote, or my question, with this waterproofing, is it essential to be done prior to the 10th Street Bridge, or is it something that could be held off until the 10th Street Bridge was done?
We could possibly do that, yes.
Well, I would make that recommendation to hold off until after the 10th Street Bridge was completed.
I don't think I'll support that motion. This bridge has exhibited some serious cracking now going on for quite a few years, and the materials that we lay down in our roadways in the winter are not such that we want them into the steel structure of a bridge. So some of the resurfacing was the bridge and 8th Street and using the detour, and I think by removing this from the budget, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot with improving the condition of the detour, which we're trying to establish before the bridge comes out. I'd see this as really integral with the detours and really necessary to get that bridge sealed off and enhance the life and the duration of the bridge, because it's the same as paving 10th Street, doing the new bridge and paving it in January, February. You absolutely wouldn't want to do that. You wouldn't want to asphalt a bridge deck in the middle of winter and get a poor job.
What would you place the odds at of us having to replace this bridge immediately after the 10th Street Bridge if something like this doesn't get done?
Well, it will definitely shorten its life expectancy. I mean, if we wait, this would be, based on Councillor Dodd's motion, we wouldn't be able to get to this to 2021. But it wouldn't mean, I wouldn't we wouldn't actually remove the asphalt on this bridge, we'd leave everything as is. I mean, it's just being exposed to some of the salts that's currently happening. Would it shorten the life expectancy? It will definitely have an impact. But the bridge won't need to be replaced right after the 10th Street Bridge. It'll still be some time. It's just that, whether it's 20 years or 30 years, I'd rather replace a bridge in 30 years as opposed to 20 years.
Just quickly, OCIF, our formula-based funding, is not application-based, so we are guaranteed those funds, but we do have to submit projects for approval before we can apply funding. This project, since it was originally planned for last year, we have submitted this project. It has already been approved for OCIF, so it is fully funded no matter when you do it. That being said, you could always apply those OCIF funds and go through that process for a different project, but currently it's funded through that grant and it has no impact on our tax levy.
So I'll be honest, but the reason I made that motion was to try to get some sort of insight here on the conversation between council of the three major projects that are happening at the same time. So I will withdraw my recommendation. More important aspect of this conversation is we have three massive projects that are dependent all on months within each other. So that's the purpose of that recommendation, but I will withdraw my recommendation.
And I understand what you're saying, but what choice do we really have with the importance of the 10th Street Bridge, right? Like
you have multiple choices, actually. You have three projects that are going on at the same time. Now, one of those projects may not have to go forward. So if we're deciding that the 8th Street Bridge water decking is important to the 10th Street Bridge, I'd say one of our other capital projects that are currently listed would not be in that top priority, is what I'm trying to say.
I'm just trying to clarify, Dennis. So for July, August, no, sorry, I withdraw that. This happens before 10th Street. There's no overlap. Thank you.
Correct.
Ian and I can only handle so much traffic down our 9th Street.
I think we should get a kickback, sir.
Okay, so motion was withdrawn. We can move, unless there's something else on specifically on 8th Street Bridge.
From a staff perspective, what advice can you give us from council? The concern is about project burnout from the existing staff, as well as not meeting the timing deadlines for the workflow. What recommendations can you provide to us, having heard our concerns?
I think one thing, you mean recommendations on how council can help us achieve our goals?
Recommendations of a different phased-in approach to these four major projects, if possible.
Well, when I look at a project like this, everyone thinks it's $60,000. I say it's only $60,000. It's a small component overall of what we're planning on doing next year. So it's really about timing. For me, it's always about timing. Like, make sure we don't duplicate efforts. So when we go to mill the road, we're going to mill the bridge, we're going to mill the road that we plan on repaving. Don't say, well, I'm going to get this contractor to do specifically this, because the coordination's not there. So it's really coordination that's coming into play here. In terms of staff burnout, I mean, this is a lot of work, but like I say, I'm not expecting staff to do anything more than what I would expect of myself. So, I mean, everyone here is pretty gung-ho and pretty keen about these projects. We have a guy, Peter Paquette, who can handle quite a bit. And what we do is have support for him, but we've got a sufficient staff to deal with these projects. And for someone like myself, I mean, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I could take on at least two of these major projects easily and not bat an eye. And Peter Paquette's in the same boat. He could do the bridge and do the river precinct. And, we have a young guy downstairs, a new engineer who's extremely smart guy, and he catches on quickly. You got myself, you got Chris Webb, again, tons of experience. I mean, I have no concern about staff burnout. In fact, I think that they're so excited about these projects, they're looking to do them.
So you, from your perspective, you're assuring us that if we approve these major projects, you can deliver the goods?
As long as you guys deal with the general public and answer all the questions, yes.
There is the next other point. Staff may be able to handle it. Can our community? Can our downtown businesses afford to take the hit?
Well,
That's
the
an
way-
awful lot of closed streets for an entire summer. Maybe it's better to do it all at once and
Well, the things I found, like, Your Worship, I found in the past that people I find, are more annoyed and more upset when things drag on. If you're gonna, it's like, you have a toothache, pull the tooth. Here we're trying to make improvements, trying to invest in the downtown core, let's do it as much as possible. We're gonna do our best to keep the roads, like, we're not gonna close down 9th Street and 8th Street simultaneously. We're gonna make sure we communicate the heck out of it so people know. And we're always gonna know you're gonna have access from one direction or the other. So we're going to make sure that businesses, along, especially along Main Street, there's always going to be access. Whether you can use 8th or 9th, we're going to make sure you have one or the other, or 10th. There's always going to be one or two of the three are going to be open at all times. That's what we're planning on doing. And this is what I'm saying, like when we talk about the Golden Horseshoe, we're not going to close 2nd and 3rd Avenue down at the same time, and that would just defeat the purpose. So we're going to communicate and make sure that when the contractor submits his construction schedule, it's to our satisfaction and for our approval. It's not for what benefits him, it's how he's going to benefit us as a city. Here's the great project. This is a real exciting project, the Downtown River Precinct. This is investment in the downtown. This is phase 1. This is a project, again, speaking from a staff standpoint, we're so excited about this project. We can't wait to get started. We've been having meetings already to discuss how we're going to proceed. Again, I think 71% of this project is funded through OCIF, and only 21% is through tax. So, I mean, this is a lot of bang for the buck. This is going to really enhance the downtown, I think. And it just builds momentum, and it gives people confidence that the city and council are making an investment in our downtown. So we're in love with this project, sorry.
Thank you. I too would love to see this go forward. However, timing is not great with downtown and 10th Street Bridge and so on. So explain to me what portion of this project, when it says 4 phases of the construction, what portion of the project is this phase, and how much is it going to affect our traffic flow?
This phase is actually between 8th and 9th along 1st Avenue in behind City Hall here. So really, it's going to, we have to work with the downtown market to see how we can ensure they can maintain some sort of ongoing business on the weekends. But this really, in terms of access to the businesses on Main Street, Fuller's, there's only very few that actually have access through the back. The rest have all that access through the front. Even Fuller's does, Fulmer's, sorry, does. So this in itself, I mean, it's really it's an area that wouldn't really impact traffic that much when we do close down those sections. I mean, there's not that much.
Closing the 10th Street Bridge, unless people divert on this 1st Avenue East roadway,
yeah,
because they know it's there,
yeah,
the general traffic will be going around all of this construction.
absolutely. And this
And
will
there
be done.
should be no issues.
Well, I'm not, there should be no issues in terms of people always have access to get to where they want to go.
I just want to hear from others on their concerns about this.
Once again, I'm going to go back to those time frames. Downtown River Precinct, we start May 2019, finish August 31st, 2019. 8th Street Bridge, start the project July 2019, finish September 2019. Upgrade trunk water mains, April 2019 to August, September 2019. I know you're saying those all will have some sort of directional vehicle access at some point, but 3 of those projects that are, some of them are involving, 1st Avenue East is going to close for your grading and doing your other revampment of the roadway. 8th Street Bridge during that time is going to be graded and be resealed during that time while we're still having the market and other things going on. Further down on that road, we're going to have our water trunk mains going on between 2nd and 3rd Avenue, between 10th and 9th Street. I'm not, there's nothing obviously against what you're proposing. I just think that's a lot of activity going on at the exact same time when we're still trying to maintain traffic flow, and we know that the 10th Street Bridge, without a doubt, has to start on October 2019.
Yep. I'm not sure what else I can say, but I mean, a project like this, again, I mean, it's all about coordinating and timing. This should be a 16-week project. There's not that much sewer main that has to, or sorry, water main that has to be replaced. It's a very short section, not too many services that have to be connected. That's what really delays things when you're doing a water main replacement, is the sections. When you're laying pipe, you should be laying pipe fairly quickly. Again, this is all surface improvements. So again, with our contractors that we have in town, we've got some really good contractors and capable of doing a lot of work. Like, we figure that water main project is one contractor. We anticipate that this will be an additional contractor. So these contractors, there's work that's going to be going on simultaneously. Like this we can shut down and then figure out what we're going to do when we start resurfacing 8th Street. And that's stuff that we can push off to July in August, because we can get this done, a majority of this done, and then start linking everything together. Again, it's all about timing. And that's what we want to do, is coordinate everything so we do keep those avenues open and those detours open so we can still get a flow of traffic.
So my question would be, knowing that, like, I think the downtown river precinct plan is going to be fantastic for the downtown community. I was a big supporter of it. You know, I talked to downtown businesses. I was in favor of trying to make sure that went through. I think the Farmers Square is going to add huge opportunities to the market and the downtown core. My only concern is just when you have that many projects and you know that 3 of them need to be done, they have to be done to appease to a $3 million grant from the province. Does that downtown river precinct, would that be a better fit for May 2020 to August 2020? When those other projects are already done, the roadway will be opening up, you know, like, I'm very concerned about that timing, and it's nothing against anyone on staff, nothing against anyone in the construction industry. It's just the fact that sometimes projects don't go on time. And if we have any of these override each other, we're up a creek.
Well, if I can, I mean, this project, in terms of 10th Street Bridge, this won't affect it as much. So we know that this is I'm not saying it's a simple project, but it's cookie cutter in terms of the work that has to be done here. And it's just about laying it out and getting it done. So again, as long as we can keep 8th Street and 9th Street open, one or the other, and both for the majority of the time, this should be able to go ahead while we're replacing stuff on like the water main on 2nd and 3rd Avenue. That's what we want to see. These projects going and seeing. I mean, it's going to be busy, and it's going to be noisy, and it's going to be dusty. But some of these projects are independent of the other. The only thing is, like you said, we have to get everything done ready for 10th Street Bridge. And if somehow if this project was, there was some delays in this project, as long as we got 8th and 9th open and the bridge is out, so no one's using 1st Avenue and fewer people parking in our parking lots, the parking lots 8 and 9 will be full. Or 9 and 10.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would certainly, from my seat, if you're concerned with too much work, I would defer the 8th Street Bridge project. The community has put a lot of hours into moving the downtown Riverfront Precinct project to where it is. And I truly believe it will be the beginning of a catalyst that downtown core needs, has been waiting for. I think to postpone it is, quite frankly, to perhaps shelve it. So if there's some thoughts that we can't handle all this work, even though I think Mr. Kafalis has assured us he will do his best to get that work done, I would strongly recommend that you defer the 8th Street Bridge project and continue with 10th Street and this project. That's my opinion, Your Worship.
Well, I echo what Councillor Dodd's concerns are, and I'm super nervous about it, but where I would cast my vote in favor of a really busy summer downtown is the positivity of having this work all done when that bridge is out, and the exposure then that comes from having all those vehicles be detoured on streets going right by 8th and 9th Street and seeing the upgrade in the downtown and the investment. Whereas to delay it to after the 10th Street is to remove an incredible amount of exposure, free exposure, people that are just commuting through the city on their way to somewhere else. And this, while it's going to be really busy this summer, and I know firsthand what interruption can be, because I know the dollars that get lost with a hillside on 8th Street, but I think the positive exposure outweighs, in this case, a really busy summer. So I like the initiative, and hopefully that shovel gets in the ground as soon as it's thawing.
From your experience with project management, what percentage actually meet deadline?
Oh, when I'm involved?
Sure.
I would say of my experience, I learned from some pretty senior and seasoned guys, and it's really about being diligent.
Are you saying 100%?
I would say of all the projects I've been involved on, my motto was on time and on budget. And I actually put that on my letterhead. So, I mean, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm thinking, given our staff, because we'll be on these contractors all the time, I would say, in my personal case, I would say somewhere between 95 and 100%.
Thank you.
So I looked from one end of this table to the other. I don't think any one of us knows anything about construction. So we can be nervous all we want, but we don't know. So if you're telling us you can get it done, get it done.
I'm going to get it done.
So we can be nervous, all right. I'm looking at it the other way. When we finish the 10th Street Bridge, anyone that drives through Owen Sound is going to be so frustrated and so fed up. Do you want to be the one to tell them, oh yeah, by the way, we still have 8th Street Bridge to do? And oh yeah, by the way, we're going to do the Downtown River Precinct? I don't. Like, let's get it done so that when that bridge is finished, clear sailing. Those are my comments.
My comment is just on funding. When this says partial growth related, can we use development charges?
There is a small portion of this project that can be funded through development charges that relates to the roadwork. That being said, I would like to wait and see where we get with the development charge holiday. Depending on how we decide to fund that, we may or may not be able to use DCs for projects if we are collecting them.
I will only echo what Brian said. I trust Dennis. I'm not saying people here don't trust him, but that's a high completion rate you just quoted us. We hire character as well as people, and I just trust your ability to get this done, Dennis. And I'm with Scott. Just get it done. Let's wrap it up in one summer.
Just for the record, I'm the opposite of all these guys. I trust you, but you're not going to be the guy with the shovel in your hand. It's going to be a contractor. We've been through this before. I've been around for 8 years and listened to engineers promising me everything, and some of them aren't here anymore. I think we're crazy to be doing all these at once. I would have set aside, if I got to vote by myself, River Precinct until after, but I don't see any motions coming, but that's my position for the record.
None at all. This is just essentially the maintenance period for the work that we conducted this year. This is our normal practice. There's always work like engineering associated with the maintenance period. Given the magnitude of the project, $10,000 for the next 2 years is not out of line. This is a massive project that we will do or anticipate to do in partnership with the county. The county does want to redo the road, the East Bay Shore, from roughly 28th at the intersection of the water treatment plant, and extend it just roughly in front of the residential homes along that section of road. We have to replace our sanitary lift station. We have 2 lift stations there right now. We're trying to combine them into one. It does tie in with the potential development of the old RCA site, where we need to replace that sewage lift station. What we want to do next year is finish off the engineering for that lift station, at least have that done, and then propose for bring it back in year 2, which is 2020, and anticipate completing this project in partnership with the county. who wants to resurface the road, so they would pay for the resurfacing. We'd have to cover the cost for any concrete and any sidewalk amenities that we plan on installing, and for the lift station.
Thank you, Worship. So this is the portion that we had skipped over in the previous past about doing the upgrade of that pumping station at the old RCA.
Correct.
So, so could you just repeat that? This year, that's $45,000 or $50,000 being associated with doing that pumping house?
No, just completing the design.
The design portion of it.
Yeah.
Is it easier to do that? So you're saying in year 2, when I see the $4.2 million that's going to come up to capital budget next year, that will include the upgrading of that pump house?
Correct.
In that portion?
That lift station, yeah.
And I'm going to jump over through you to Ms. Coulter. Have we had any progress from RCA Development noting their subdivision plans from what we had received years ago?
Through your worship, that project is draft plan approved. They haven't applied to move forward with a subdivision agreement at this time.
Would they have to advise further if they're going to remove the rest of those buildings on that piece of land?
Through you, your worship, I thought the entire building was gone on the RCA. No, still.
RCA still has a portion of
Okay.
our old gym.
I think Mr. Kefalis may have been speaking with that developer on the pumping station.
Thank you, Ms. Coulter. Yeah, I actually sent a letter to the engineer and for the developer and the developer as well, indicating what we needed. Because there's a portion of land that we need for the new lift station. His part of the staff report that came forward to council indicated that they were going to cover a portion, make a contribution towards the lift station, as well as when we talked about the roadways leading up to the Kiwanis soccer pitches, that they were going to actually responsible to upgrade those to a more of an urban standard as opposed to a rural standard, ones that are adjacent to their blocks of development. I'm still waiting to hear back from them because we want to move ahead just to get the approvals from MOECC. I think that's what they call themselves now. So that process could take up to a year. So I've indicated to them we need to have that land, a small little parcel of land, in our possession by the end of the first quarter of 2019.
And when we're talking about doing in year 2, about doing the full rescape of this portion of 3rd Avenue, this would be the last portion basically, right?
That'll be it. I mean, I think the rest is in fairly good shape. It has gutter and curb and gutter along the sections, you know, all those houses that front onto the lake. So this is the last orphan piece of East Bay Shore within the city limits that needs to be completed.
So what should we be preparing for your next year's budget when we see that 4.2 capital plan? Is that going to come from water, wastewater? Is that coming from, going to be coming from just capital expense, from taxation?
A portion of it will, a good portion will come from Lakeford wastewater treatment plant, so I think that's just over $1 million, maybe 1.1, comes from wastewater. There's a good chunk of change that'll be coming from the county to cover the actual asphalt surfacing and the widening of the road, and we'll be required to cover the cost for any sort of curb and gutter along the sides, and we have identified this section of road to install a sidewalk to on the, I guess, the east side of the road, to link the proposed development site, and that way it'll provide a pedestrian access all the way up to eventually all the way up to the soccer pitches as well.
Yeah, well, so I think it's really important that we do recognize the fact that we have been going through this capital budget process today and removing some capital expenses, and I know maybe some people will be having the feeling that we were going to do this to offset on the operating expense to decrease the overall tax levy. Some may be hoping to reuse that for other capital projects they'd like to see done happen in the 2019 year. And I would also just like to leave that in the mind of other councillors that this is also another project, big project that's going to come in, that's going to be debentured again, I'm assuming, that we would like to have some, we can always take some of this capital savings that we are doing to apply to the 2020 year, because we know there's further capital expenses coming.
Next project is Harrison Park rehabilitation and drainage. Again, this is there's a maintenance period, and there are also some small. not deficiencies per se with the work that was done, but deficiencies in the sense of after the work was done, we noticed there were some drainage issues, and hopefully this project will deal with those drainage issues because they will have an impact on both the walking trail and the road. This was a project that we brought forward as a staff report to the operations committee. Again, it's looking for improvements on pedestrian crossings, crossovers and school crossing guard locations to make it more, make it safer for both pedestrians and mostly for students. So we've identified 3 locations, and we'll be moving forward with one of them in 2019.
Can you just explain exactly what you'd be doing for these? Is it?
If you look at the little picture on the, I guess the southeast, like the bottom left-hand side, or right-hand side, that's what we want to do. We have a certain standard that we have to meet as part of the Ontario Traffic Management Book, as well as the Transportation Association of Canada. So what you're seeing there is you're putting in crosswalks, you're actually putting the lights that will be flashing to allow to identify people are crossing. So it does create a more safer environment. There's also another location where we're putting, it's all about we've identified the routes that students are taking to schools and identifying areas, depending on the school age, especially the younger kids who seem to be distracted very easily, of including additional crossing guards to make sure those kids cross and they are able to make it across the street safely.
So I note here that you have the 3 recommendations. This also, once again, falls in the same line with the other 4 projects that will be going on at the same time. So if you do select the 10th Street West and 6th Avenue West option,
no.
Thank you.
It's just we want to make a list, so as time goes on, that we'll do those over the years.
That was going to be my question. Which one of these 3 are you selecting?
I think we are there looking at, because this won't take that much time, and it won't really affect anyone until we actually get the crosswalk in. But we're looking at probably the top one, the one on top of the list. Welcome. This project, the Industrial Park Commuter Recycling Trail, this was initiated this year. There was a bit of delays associated with the conflict we had with the Skidoo Association and a Skidoo Trail, so the project's well on its way and it's just finalizing it this year.
I just have an asterisk on this one. I had the pleasure of being on it before the snow fell, and I just can't believe it's $41,000 more work going to go into it. It's paved, it looks great. It doesn't have a yellow line down the middle if there's getting to be a yellow line, but what else has to be done for $41,000? Because I had no complaints.
There's still some deficiencies that we have to look at, but like you said, the line painting, bit of landscaping, that's what the project budget was, not necessarily we're going to spend it all. That's what's remaining, and that's what we're carrying forward. So at the end, it's similar to when we planted the trees along the trail. It's in the rail trail. Again, we had about $165,000, and we were able to complete that for $125,000. So again, this is what we're just carrying forward, what's remaining in the contract and the budget. Not necessarily we're going to spend it all.
In the description, it mentions it will address incomplete items or deficiencies by the contractor. So why aren't we going back to the contractor?
Well, the work, I'm sorry, through your worship, they didn't have a chance to complete all the work. There's still some outstanding work that has to be done before because we got a late start.
Why is it costing us more money then?
It's not. This is just money that's within the budget.
So the money is for signage and markings?
And anything else that he hadn't completed up until the time they stopped construction
That
for
he
this
hadn't
year.
completed. Was it not in his contract to complete it?
Oh yeah, we just ran out of time, seasonally speaking.
So why does it cost us more money then if it's already?
Through your worship, this is costing us more money because we were approved for this program after the budget went through last year. So although we got, I think it was 75% funding from the funding source, we had to come up with our own share for the difference. We could, If we left that in the current year, it would create a deficit in the current year because it wasn't in the budget. So as this is an overlapping year end, we are going to fund our share of the program in the 2019 capital budget.
The way I see this then is we've got $11,550 in the reserve carrying forward. I'd love to see the contractor finish whatever deficiencies may be there and put that $11,550 to work, but I'd like to see after that was spent what else needed done before allocating another $28,000 of taxation to it.
Through your worship, this is a cost-sharing program, so whatever the end cost is, the funding source will fund a certain percentage of that. If we come in under budget, they'll claw back the grant. We still are required to fund our share of the project. Whatever the total project cost ends up being, we will be responsible for 30% or whatever that percentage was. I'd have to look at the agreement.
This is an annual program. This is, provides funding for residents who are experiencing backflow within their properties. People do take advantage of it. And again, it's to install the necessary backflow preventers on their sewer system and storm system and to separate the two of them. So we do give out people grants of $3,000 to help recover their cost.
How many approximately in the last 2-3 years have we done on this? Because it's been expressed to me that the cost of doing this in their house is far beyond what they're getting for a grant, so they're just not doing it.
I can find out those numbers for you, but one specific individual, I think they were looking in the between $4,500 and $5,000 to undertake the work, so we were going to cover almost more than 50%. You know, I think it all depends on the situation and how easily the items can be installed and how easily the storm and the sanitary can be separated. So some are very easy. I mean, you're just pumping it right outside, and if you're able to drain it away, it just flows off your property. Some are more extensive, where you have to provide an outlet that goes quite a ways to meet some sort of existing storm reception system. This is a project that started in 2017, and actually it was put on hold. Again, this is developing a master plan to help us with the storm drainage and management on the Brook Basin area. Again, this is something that will help us in the long run because it'll help us control the water quality of the storm water that makes its way into Georgian Bay, which in turn has an effect on our water treatment of the bay. So this is something like over the years that we're trying to, you know, we've invested quite a bit over the last few years, especially with the Kenny drain system, so we understand that we're going to have to, you know, slowly phase some of these programs in place, but we want to get a plan in place to identify projects that we can bring forward. But we don't want to inundate council with these projects year after year because they do end up costing quite a bit of money. Here's another one that we're trying to build up reserve because this is an area that we'll have to create a similar receiving pond that will help with water quality of the storm system within this area as outlined in the map, especially on the east side and the downtown core, and up as you go up to the upper, I guess they call it the upper bluff, but again, this will be the receiving environment, Georgian Bay, and again, it would be to build a reserve up so that we can install a similar system like a treatment, not a treatment pond, but a water quality, essentially a treatment pond for the storm water before it enters the bay. And this is something that we plan to do over the years, and as our budgets allow, we'll start implementing some of these larger projects.
If I may, just a quick question. Ultimately, I can't imagine that our goal is to put a stormwater management pond pretty much on the waterfront. But that's how this reads? Like ideally, this would be your high-priced, high-demand land, and I would think that a stormwater management pond would be a really, really, really low priority to place there. But it's just maybe how I'm interpreting this.
It'll become part of like a park environment once it is installed. And right now, what I'm trying to do is see if we can identify some SEM funding for climate change, and this is possibly a project in the future that could fall within the criteria. Because as we notice that we're noticing more rain events than we experienced before. Right now, our 100-year storms seem to be our 4-year storms. You know, even this year we've had at least one, if not two, 100-year events, just because of the amount of water is falling in that duration. It does fall within that category. So things are changing. And usually when you die, like, the problem with this, like, I understand what you're trying to say, Councillor Gregg, but it's just, we're confined to what we can do. And the thing is, anything that we develop will be kind of blended into a park space. And it really, the only time we retain water is during these major events. But water won't be, it won't become like you know, there might be small parts that might retain water for a longer period of time. Most of the water, they'll collect the water, and then it drains at a certain rate. So eventually, after the big rain event, you say, oh, it's filled up with water. And 2 days later, you'll walk by, and it'll be completely drained. And it's just about retaining the water, allow settlement to occur, and then instituting certain vegetation that'll help absorb some of these elements. This next project is the 16th Avenue Sanitary Sewer Upgrade. This was a commitment on behalf of the city for the section of land that is bordered by 10th Street East, 6th Street East. The developer is moving ahead this year with a major, I guess it's phase one. It's a good portion of it will be developed, and this was a commitment we made several years ago, and one that we'll have to fulfill this year. And what we have to do here is actually lower the sanitary main and increase the size. This is the Georgian Landing Apartments. This was brought forward as a staff report to council. Again, the city's committed $50,000 towards the relocation of the sanitary sewer servicing the townhouses located south of the property. Right, what happened before, as you can see in that picture, that little mound that's coming right across, that's the sanitary sewer that was serving at least 3 units, if not 5. So that had to be relocated in order for the developer to be able to complete his project as he designed it. So we made that commitment during the pre-development stages when we knew that there would be an issue. So it's costed more than $50,000, but the city's committed $50,000 to help get this development underway. So, and he is looking at, he's indicated that he's hoped to have the occupancy by October, November of 2019. So. This is a different project. So we sold this piece of land on 23rd Street East. What we have to do, though, is we have an easement on the property to install a drainage ditch that will drain the waters that are located between the properties on 20th Street East and these properties. And it's something that we have to do in order to release some of the captured storm water within that back area. I do have some photos there that shows you the catchment area. And the reason that we're doing this, even though we sold the property and we sold it for, I think, $50,000, this is something we had planned on doing. Originally thought we would actually retain a right-of-way, 6-meter right-of-way to install this ditch. The decision was made to help the developer to, instead of retaining that right-of-way, to actually provide an easement on his property. This way would allow him to maximize his development of the property, because when you take about the setbacks associated with the side property line, this way the setback would include he could build right up to the edge of our drainage ditch or the edge of the easement without having to deal with that setback, because the setback would actually be beyond the edge of the easement. If you guys want to see the, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, this one I'm a little just concerned, well, I guess I am concerned with it. I just, if we're paying for this here,
Yeah.
so we're front-ending basically a project for this, got to have drainage, proper drainage for this.
Not this part, no, it's for us. I'll circulate a map here.
So how are we going to recoup $50,000 back from the next sale of the land, piece of land around it? Or is this just an investment that we're doing and we basically sold the piece of land for nothing?
If I could, Your Worship, just as Mr. Kafalis hands out the map, The land that the city readied for sale, we've sold 2 lots there. One was McNabb Roofing and the second one is for an automotive repair. The lands that we sold essentially served as an outlet for much of the public works yard and property. So it was, without any formal drainage, serving as the outlet for that storm water. Now that we've sold those lands, we're not allowed to direct our water from that property over these lands. It needs this storm outlet towards 23rd.
And if you look at that map, it's roughly between 2 and 3 hectares of land that we have to drain. So on there, you can see there's 2 little lines on the east side of the property in question, and that's where the drainage ditch will be installed to drain the water to the existing ditching on 23rd Street East.
So the lines, if I'm interpreting this, are in between McNabb's and lot 1843 and 1853, but we sold 1857.
I might have made a mistake on the map, but I thought it was, yeah. That was 1843 that we sold.
Well, it looks like 2 lines there. Which doesn't really have anything to do with 1857. What if the guy never builds anything on this lot here, and then the city takes the land back, and we're at $50,000 for?
I've just confused the situation by creating a map with the showing the wrong property on here. So
We do have a pre-consultation in on this property right now, and we do have the buyback. I think the city wouldn't proceed with this capital project in the absence of development.
yeah. The whole idea of the map is just to try and show you what the area that we have to drain, and we have to get it somewhere. So either way, we're having an easement along 1857 that'll allow us to build that ditch all the way to 23rd Street East.
And we've got the new capture pond, the Kenny drain system.
Yeah.
Literally a baseball throw away behind the pet hospital at the end of the southern terminus of 18th Avenue.
But we're also like with the whole problem with this air photo is that 2015 doesn't show the solar farm that was installed, which had to be raised in order to create a level field, so that interfered with bringing the water out in that general direction. The next one is, again, commitment that city made for both water main and surface treatments to deal with the surface drainage for the Sydenham Condo Association. So it's a commitment that we have to make. Again, sorry?
My question is just, why have we not seen this one in 2015 or 2016, 2017? If it's always been an obligation, why did it just come now on the Sydenham?
I think this year when we started realizing what we had, Kate mentioned we got to start bringing these forward and showing council the commitment. So the commitment was there. It was on our to-do list, and she indicated we have to bring these forward. Again, this is Sydenham Heights trunk service and maintenance period. It's the last year of the maintenance period. And again, this is typical of what we see of a project of this nature. Sometimes you don't incur all these costs, but we do have them in place to cover any expenses. This is for the specific development charge associated with Sydenham Heights. Again, it's to help determine the actual development charges based on a final construction cost and for the servicing that was installed. Maintenance period for revegetation of the rail trail with the landscape architect. Again, that was a project that was completed this year with all the trees that we installed. Maintenance period associated with the Kenny Drain, which was a massive project, again, same things typical we see for a project like this. So it's the maintenance and a bit of construction associated with for next year to help level off some of the lower areas. I don't think we ever, thank you. And Kate will talk about the development charges update instead.
There will certainly be more reports to follow as it relates to development charges, but our development charge bylaw expires in 2019, so we will be working to do an update to that 5-year bylaw in the coming year.
Sorry. Street lighting is general. It's a fund we have in place to cover the cost to replace any of the high pressure sodium street lights that weren't replaced originally through our LED upgrades, and to deal with any of the standard light poles that need to be replaced, as well as any that might be damaged by hit and runs where we can't recover the cost through insurance. So it's an annual $15,000. This is upgrade of the director street light fixtures and pole replacements. We plan on doing the first phase, will be this year. It'll be along 2nd Avenue East, and we're looking at approximately 21 decorative light poles. We're looking to replace them with a pole that will stand up better to the more corrosive resistant. And we're looking at LED fixtures to ensure that we maintain the same sort of look as we currently have.
Dennis, these were installed during the big dig. How old are they?
Yeah, so it's because they're starting to really get beat up in terms of corroding and rusting, especially at the bases. So now we're looking at the pre-stressed or concrete poles that you'll see similar in Lot 5. So they've got a nice dark color, and they should be held up much longer than what we currently have in place.
How aggressive are we with warranties and so forth? This might not apply because it's quite older, but...
I can't really speak to that, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure giving the individuals that I deal with on a daily basis, they're pretty...
I'm just surprised a light standard doesn't last longer. What do I know?
But the thing is, there's a certain level of maintenance that we conduct downtown, and you can see that I think it's really, really good. So, and safe for pedestrians and motorists. So it does have, its repercussions in terms of the amount of salt we use on the road too. So this was another project we brought forward as staff report to operations. It's additional street lights along a section of 8th Avenue West that was completely dark. We did install a few lights earlier this year. The plan is to install several more along the section that fronts onto the park, along the park, to make it safer for pedestrian traffic along that street. And that's it. Unless we want to go to the next section and keep going.
I think a couple of councillors have to be somewhere in 8 minutes, and clerk would like to be home for dinner in 9 minutes and has to cook when she gets there. So it's about 4:51. That leaves us contract services, fire services, library fleet, and police capital. You don't want to summarize or anything now, I suppose, so.
Through your worship, I might just give you a quick summary of where we ended up today. We cut approximately $120,000 out of the tax base funding. So when we come back on the 23rd, along with those other programs that we haven't reviewed today, we may discuss how you want to treat that room that has been created. And we'll move forward with that. I also just wanted to let everyone know that apparently it's very slippery outside, so as you're leaving, just be careful heading out the door and driving tonight.
Ryan?
I hate to wrap it up on a sour note, but I'm going to. I want to put a motion on the floor. I don't know where we're at for overall. We came in today at 3.4%. I'm really, before we even get talking, I'm really disappointed. I think I'm going to put a motion on the floor. Hopefully council will support me to ask staff to come back on the 23rd with that 3.41 change to 2.9. And I'll give you a couple of reasons why. gadget there, the $40,000, I stopped short of calling those toys. Like there's one thing after another, the $35,000 power gate. We didn't even get into fleets, but we have new half-ton trucks and three-quarter trucks that only have 140,000 kilometers on, that we're gonna purchase new ones just because that's what we do. We're gonna keep rolling. And it's not, I get a new truck too every 2 or 3 years, but I wouldn't if I couldn't afford it. I would wait another year, and I just don't see any of that. And maybe we're just being too nice as a council, we're being nice to you, and it gets filtered down. We didn't get into fire. Our firefighters want new lockers. They have lockers, but they want new lockers. Right? That's disheartening for me. New rain, I'm not getting into rain, as far as I know. Since I was elected, we got this, we brought in $800,000 of our service review. Last year, we had $181,000 in a growth, Kate, correct? $181,000 growth. Is that what it was in dollars? It doesn't matter. So, sorry. Anyway, my point is, we're finding this money, and if it's $800,000, $181,000, that's almost $1 million that we've found. And what have you done with it? You've spent it. Like here you are back again at 3.41. It wouldn't matter if we found $1 million or not. So, and it's not just staff. I think we have to take responsibility too. So I think we got to get our big boy boots on and our big girl boots on. And, we got to start with this at 2.9 when you come back, and then we got to do some more work because, the taxpayers are screaming and we're not doing anything about it. It doesn't look like it to me anyway. Like it's just a kick in the stomach to see us at 3.41 just to start with. And I think that's got to change. Maybe it's the way maybe we have to change the way we're thinking. Maybe we have to change attitudes. I don't know, but something's got to change. It's not good enough. That's my motion.
Okay, you want to reword it? State it.
That we ask staff to come back on the 23rd with an overall increase of 2.9.
Recommendations
Well, I don't know how they're going to do it. They can decide how they do it.
for overall budget.
Overall budget.
Everybody understands the motion? Discussion? Go ahead.
So you're not saying 2.9 capital, you're saying 2.9 overall?
Correct.
No further discussion, all in favor? 2, 4, 3, it's carried. So I think that completes all the business we're going to, go ahead.